Well, hello everyone. My name is Melantis Basgi. You can catch me on Mary J. Blige's Family Affair this Saturday, premiering on Lifetime. Real Love and Strength of a Woman will be premiering as well as the prequels. And tune in to Kneel Before Pod.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello and welcome to Kneel Before Pod, the podcast that might be looking forward to the mushroom apocalypse, actually. I'm your host, Craig, and we are here for the first 2025 news roundup. We technically had one that released in 2025, but this is the first one talking about 2025. It is January, and we're here to discuss news, trailers, other bits and pieces. Joining me for this section of the conversation anyway, is Andrew. Hello.
Hello.
How are you feeling about this new year of content sludge, as I've come to call it?
Like you, I am eagerly awaiting psilocybin psychosis just so I can escape from the madness of the world and the decreasing number of things you can use to maintain sane while living in it.
Sounds about right. Let's just start with what's been getting watched recently. What's been in front of your eyes of late?
I watched the first season of Creature Commandos.
I gave up on that after like 3 episodes because I just wasn't vibing with it. It just seemed like Diet Suicide Squad, I guess, is the best term I can think of for it. But yeah, after 3 episodes, I was thinking, I'm just not keen on this.
Yeah, fair enough. I actually really enjoyed it. Just because the characters that were using it are so incredibly obscure that you wouldn't have any preconceived notions of what they were like and how they should behave or what should happen to them, which I thought made it all more interesting. And also purposefully delving into the backstories of each of them. It's reinforcing the idea that monsters are basically made rather than being born, because each of them in different ways were a little more than a victim of circumstance and ending up incarcerated, often through not actually any fault of their own, and with having done little to deserve it, which just makes a lot of it a little more tragic.
I understand that he introduced Batman in that, sort of. You saw a silhouette of Batman.
Yeah, that was it. It's just literally one shot.
And what's your take on the James Gunn writing women debate that sprung up a few weeks ago? I think as a white man, you are well versed to comment on such a topic.
I've actually managed to completely missed this debate.
Basically, it was people were sharing clips that I didn't watch and talking about how James Gunn is really bad at writing women. I think it all stemmed from an episode I did see, the way that the princess or whatever she was in the first episode was treated and written. And then he released that. Here's a clip of her in the voice booth recording the moaning sounds for the sex scene and stuff. That seemed to not resonate with people in the way that he wanted it to.
Yeah, I just imagine that he expected people to find that as funny as he did.
Yeah. I mean, it's nothing. It's literally she's moaning into a microphone. That's all it was.
I do agree the princess character was a little bland and one-dimensional when you first see her. But I think that might have actually been kind of the point, just because with later revelations about her, I think it was that she intends for people to see her as this airheaded nothing princess. So people will underestimate her.
I kind of think that some of that, I'm not saying all of it, but I think some of that flaming against James Gunn's writing of women is possibly some people acting on bad faith because it's not the Snyderverse. But if you look at his more recent work with Marvel when he wrote Nebula and Gamora and Mantis, of course, I would say that they were written very well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
I can't really speak for Creature Commandos beyond the 3rd episode, and I sort of tuned out during the Bride origin episode. I just wasn't engaged by it.
That particular plotline keeps on cropping up throughout the season because Frankenstein is now obsessed with the bride and keeps on trying to find her because he believes they're destined to be together, which is her basically being stalked by her ex.
He thinks she was built for him, literally.
Exactly, and therefore she belongs to him.
That sounds twisted.
Exactly, and deliberately framing that as the toxic masculinity that it is demonstrates that James Gunn does have at least some comprehension of the issues women face.
He also said recently that his Suicide Squad movie isn't canon, but there'll be certain things that happened in the movie that will be canon. So it's not that the full events did happen, it's just more if someone mentions something that also happened in that movie, then it will be carried forward. So like the murder of Rick Flagg's son and all that.
Yeah, I think that was just an elaborate way of telling people to ignore any continuity issues between Suicide Squad and any DC Universe things going forwards.
Yeah. And, of course, Peacemaker Season 2 will be a problem because it's Season 2, but Season 1 doesn't count anymore.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to see how they handle that.
There was a brief reference to the events of Peacemaker in Creature Commandos. The Argus agent, John Economos, the big bearded, nerdy, overweight guy.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, I know him.
He's in a few scenes in Creature Commandos, and he briefly alludes to the fight against the butterflies in Peacemaker. And also, he's walking on a crutch after he speared his ankle on a length of wood in the climax.
Is James Gunn's wife in the show at all?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, well. I'm sure she'll crop up plenty.
I think that's inevitable.
Maybe she was off helping Shazam break bottles at some abandoned gas station or something. That was the weirdest post-credit scene. Not as weird as eating a cockroach, and that being the closure to the DCU. Or the DCEU, or whatever it was called.
Honestly, I think it's actually kind of appropriate.
Anyway, Creature Commandos, you enjoyed it. I haven't finished it, and probably won't. I'm holding out hope for Superman. Let's see if that's going to grab me. What else have you been watching?
The final season of Lower Decks was kind of a highlight.
Yeah, it was good. I don't think it was great, though. I feel like maybe Lower Decks was reaching that point where it was going to just slightly decline in quality. Season 5 is often where shows start to run on fumes a little bit. I feel like they were heading in that direction.
Possibly, yes. And I also think some of the character development was a bit rushed, shoved towards resolutions to issues that hadn't properly been built up.
Well, definitely. Especially in the finale.
Yeah, but I can forgive that just because I love the series so much. It just gives me joy.
Yeah, I don't understand why it's been cancelled because people like it and it's one of the few Star Trek shows that they're actively merchandising as well.
I never thought of that, but yeah, it will be.
Yeah, because there's the card game, which I have, but I haven't played, and comics and other stuff. And same with Prodigy, they made a bloody video game, for God's sake. 2 seasons. Not even going to show the second one on our platform. Great.
Cheers for that.
Crazy decisions going on at Paramount in regards to the Star Trek franchise. But yeah, Lower Decks Season 5 was good. And I wonder if that'll be the last we see of the characters, because Mike McMahon suggests that he's maybe pitching other things or maybe shopping it around or something.
I think it might be, because there are comics of the series, so we'd be telling stories that way. And I imagine that Tony Newsom is going to be a bit busy doing that Resort Planet comedy series. I'm
still not convinced that's ever going to see the light of day. It feels like one of those Star Wars projects that they announce and just will never get made. It may happen, but I highly doubt it, to be honest. Starfleet Academy will. They've started filming, so there's that.
Yes, now it exists in tangible form.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to get Riverdale does Star Trek or Star Trek does Riverdale.
Mm-hmm.
We might, and that would be amazing and ridiculous. Oh, we'll see what happens. Yeah, Lower Decks. That was a while ago from my point of view. Because I got the screeners, I stopped watching that. Well, I actually stopped watching it a week before the finale aired because they were only giving us the episodes a week in advance, or less than a week in advance. Woe is me with my screeners.
It was a while back that it was first out, but I've rewatched it a couple of times since then, so it's kind of just stayed fresh in my brain.
Anything else noteworthy? One
particular one was a random discovery on Amazon that a guy at my work recommended to me. It's called Ghost Tales, an anime from, I think, the late 90s. The actual premise of it is fairly basic. A bunch of teenagers looking into ghostly shenanigans at their school. But what makes it interesting, though, is the English dub dialogue of it. When the series was first sent to the US to get dubbed for the English language market, it didn't actually arrive with a translated script. So instead, they took the basic episode synopses and just figured out what was happening from watching the action and made up dialogue that fit with what was going on. And then they decided to have a lot of fun with it by just putting in really inappropriate stuff or things that seem wildly out of context. There's one point where one of the main guys is running from his ghost and saying, "Oh, I'm too young to die. The only person I've had sex with is my babysitter." All the teenage girls saying, "Oh my God, you're both such big, strong, handsome men. Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Saviour?"
So basically, if you can understand Japanese and then you watch this, you're like, what is going on here?
It's like a really bad fan sub from the early 90s, but recorded professionally by voice actors. And it's hilarious.
Nice. I don't think I'll ever watch it, but it sounds kind of off the wall and ridiculous.
Yeah, just wanted to bring it up because I enjoyed it.
Just a 20, 30-year-old thing.
It'll definitely be from sometime in the 90s, just judging by the animation style and quality.
Cool. Check that out on Amazon Prime if you so desire. Is the Japanese version on there as well, or just the English one?
I didn't actually check.
You didn't check? Cool. In the language settings. Maybe it would just be a Japanese dub of the English version. You imagine that?
But that'd be nuts.
Only if you understand Japanese, because if you don't, then it will just be people speaking a language you don't understand. And it'll be crazy anyway. Anything else noteworthy?
That's the main things at the moment.
Main things. Cool. I've been watching more movies than TV, actually. The only TV thing I watched really was Wallace and Gromit. I would say counts as a movie. Thought it was really good. The Christmas thing.
Yeah, Vengeance Most Foul.
Yes. I thought it was really good. And seems to have commanded an amazing audience on Christmas Day TV on the BBC. Was it 13 million people watched it?
Something ridiculous like that, yeah.
Which is more than double the population of Scotland, to put that in perspective.
Nuts.
Doctor Who as well. I watched the Christmas special and I wasn't crazy about it the first time I watched it, but for whatever reason I watched it again because I think I was nodding off during it the first time because it was Boxing Day and I was tired. But I watched it again a couple of days later and vibed with it more. It was interesting that it dealt with the fallout of COVID and how that affected people and stuff. Although I'm a bit confused about, as always, the Doctor Who timeline of did COVID happen? Because we had shows that were set during that period and nobody seemed to be isolating or masked.
Well, just remember, time is in flux.
It definitely is. And remember that half the universe is still destroyed canonically in the Doctor Who universe at the moment.
It's hard to keep track sometimes.
Yeah, it really is. But it was good. It was a Moffat script and that comes with its usual level of issues.
Yeah, and particular tropes that he just can't avoid wheeling out.
Yeah, but also it had it where it counts, so that was good. Be interesting to see what season 2 is whenever that appears. Season 2, season 18, season 206, whatever you want to number it these days. Doctor Who 2024, 2023, whatever. Assign whatever label to it you want. The next one, the next series.
The one with that guy from Sex Education in it.
Yeah, that one. But in terms of movies, I've seen a bunch of stuff. I saw Saturday Night, the Saturday Night Live movie, and I thought it was entertaining enough. It held my attention for the running time, but also I feel like there was a bit of a barrier to entry because Saturday Night Live isn't really a thing over here. So there was a lot of assumptions made about you knowing what was going on and being able to follow the historical events of it. But I couldn't because I just hadn't seen it. So I just took it as they're trying to put on a show and it's not going well. And I think I could engage with that on that level to some degree. But also I think there was a lot in there that I missed because I just didn't understand the lore. So mixed reaction to it, I suppose. But I think Americans will probably love it because they'll vibe with it a bit more.
Makes sense, yeah.
And on the other side of it, I saw the Robbie Williams movie, Better Man, which seems to have the same problem in the US.
It's hilarious.
People are not watching it because they have no idea who he is.
And then the whole chimpanzee thing is confusing them even more.
Yeah, well, it confused me when I was watching it because I get that it's a metaphor for him feeling like an outcast and things like that. But people have been making movies about people that feel like outcasts without replacing them with chimps for a very long time.
Yeah. Jana's theory about it is that he's being shown as a chimp in a way of symbolising seeing himself as a performing monkey.
Yeah, but chimps aren't monkeys.
I'm aware of that.
A lot of people don't seem to be. I've seen professional critics referring to it as the Robbie Williams monkey movie.
There's actually a running joke about that in Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels. My assumption on that was chimp would be easier to animate because their movements and expressions are closer to that of humans.
Yeah. But it also made a film that could have been made for like 25 million, cost 110 million, which makes the flop at the box office seem even more significant because it's a very expensive movie about Robbie Williams, a guy that no one in the US has heard of, apparently. But that's why he moved out to LA years ago, wasn't it? Because he could blend in there and no one knew who he was. He could go out to the shop and just not be recognised. That's fair enough. But to be fair, I thought the film was very good, actually. I think as a jukebox musical, it works really well. And some of the choreography of the musical sequences is great. I mean, it's the director of The Greatest Showman, so you're going to expect that, aren't you? Well, the clip of Rock DJ has been released in its entirety. So you can watch that and you can see the caliber of performance capture that they've done and all that. So, yeah, it was very good. And it's one of those things where I remember the rise of Robbie Williams because I lived through it.
Yeah.
I think one function of being an adult is you come to the realization that most of the singers or bands that you were into growing up had a very serious coke habit.
Yeah, well, again, it was the 90s.
Unless you watch Bohemian Rhapsody, and then you'll find out that all the members of Queen except Freddie Mercury were squeaky clean.
Yes, which, of course, is the absolute truth.
Yeah, nothing to do with the fact that they helped produce the film and therefore had some say in how they were depicted.
That's just a coincidence.
Yeah, but Robbie Williams seemed to be very up for being very vulnerable in his biopic he had a hand in creating. So kudos to him for that. He didn't paint himself in a particularly favourable light in places. I think he's always had that very low opinion of himself anyway, so that'll translate to any story he might want to tell about himself.
It's quite a common thing with public figures whose outward exterior personality is being very brash and self-absorbed and ego-driven, often used to mask massive insecurities.
Yeah, it's a very good movie. If you get the chance to watch it, then do. If you're in America and don't know who he is, then fair enough, but you might learn something. Or you might just enjoy it for it being a musical with some very British localizations, I suppose. Another musical biopic I watched was A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan one with Timothée Chalamet in the role. And it was good. I also enjoyed it. I felt it was a bit on the long side in places, but I learned things about Bob Dylan that I didn't know, which was almost everything. I didn't know a thing about the guy before watching the film, really, other than the songs of his that I know. I had no idea that he's not a very nice person, it seems.
So I understand, yes.
But it's interesting. Obviously, Bob Dylan's still alive. It's interesting he would sign off on that version of himself. Maybe he just doesn't care what people think. Just, yeah, tell this story. I don't care.
Entirely plausible, yeah.
Which is commendable in a way. And Timothée Chalamet was good. He did all his own singing as well. James Mangold, who did Walk the Line, so he already has previous for musical biopics. And Johnny Cash is in this movie as well. So that's the second time that James Mangold has directed a movie with Johnny Cash in it. Obviously, Joaquin Phoenix is maybe a bit too old to reprise a role at that stage of life, but he could have had a musical biopic cinematic universe going. Imagine if such a thing existed. We'll get it with the Beatles films, I guess, if you really want that.
That would get very confusing and very sprawling very quickly.
Yeah. I also saw Nosferatu, which I didn't care for. I found it a complete slog pretty much throughout. I understood what it was going for, but also don't feel like it was doing it particularly well, or nothing's ever going to be original. But I just feel like this take on the vampire mythos I've seen before, and the whole thing about women's sexuality and repression and how they're expected to be versus how they want to be, or the bits in between. And I just found it very drawn out and dull. It's a very good-looking, dull movie, but also I found it dull.
Yeah, aesthetically, it was magnificent.
Have you seen it as well?
Yeah. I pretty much agree, actually. When you're creating a film that essentially doesn't need to exist, you need to have a clear intention in mind of what you're trying to do and why you're actually doing it. One of the reasons why Nosferatu has been so heavily referenced and remained in public consciousness for over a century now is because it was the origin of quite a bit of what we now consider standard vampire mythology. And so to remake a film that was one of the starting points of the horror subgenre it's a part of, it seems a bit unnecessary. There is also something about Bill Skarsgård I just find utterly unengaging. Doesn't matter what he's doing or what he looks like. It's like he's just there. There's this presence that just seems out of place wherever he is. I don't know exactly what it is. It's almost like he instills in me offensive indifference.
Fair enough.
It frustrates me just how little his presence resonates with me in any way.
I'm usually very bored when Nicholas Hoult is trying to do anything. I just don't think he's good. I don't understand why people think he's good. He wasn't good in Nosferatu. He wasn't good in anything I saw him in last year. I talked about Juror Number 2 some months ago, and I loved that movie. I thought it was very good, except for him, and he's the lead. He's just always so bland and disaffected, and I don't understand why people engage with that. People praised his performance as Beast in X-Men, and I'm thinking, are you kidding? There was nothing. He didn't do anything.
It's basically there to be tragically turned blue and furry, and then to say science stuff every now and then.
And I just don't think he worked well in Nosferatu either. The second time he's played a vampire's bitch, effectively, isn't it? I didn't like him in that either. Pattern emerges, perhaps. A couple of digital releases that I've also seen. I saw a film called I've Never Wanted Anyone More. I got a screener for it. It will be out by the time that you're listening to this, but it isn't quite out yet. But I wouldn't really recommend watching it because it's not that good. It's adapted from a novel that was written in the late 1700s about this guy that falls in love with someone's fiancée and then decides that he's going to pursue her anyway. It's loosely about the idea of managing your expectations and coming to terms with reality of a situation and growing up in that way, but also she's kind of up for it some of the time. So it just turns into a bit of a CW love triangle. It's just a bit icky because he gets told that she's engaged and then he's like, well, that's a challenge. And he just keeps going for it. And I'm like, you're a creep. So it's a weird film. Alison Pill's in it. I forget the name of the lead actor. And Patrick J. Adams is also in it in a bit of a smaller role. He's the husband-to-be that we're supposed to potentially root to have his fiancée abandoned. So he's the James Marsden of the movie. That period where he was always cast as the man that the woman will get rid of. So, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. It's not great. Gave it 2 stars. When I sent my review off to the PR people that sent it to me, they replied with, okay, we won't use this one on the marketing then. Sorry, I'm not going to pretend I liked it. Even if you offer to send me swag in the post that I can open on video and show people who don't care. I hate people that do that. You can't respect their opinion. Look at all this stuff I got sent for this movie that I love. Do you love it? Okay.
Well, is it very fortunate that you loved it then, wasn't it?
Yeah, imagine if you didn't like it. that might prevent you from getting such boxes of goodies in the future. And wouldn't that be terrible? Can't be having a world without free crap, can we? That you stick in a cupboard after you've opened the box, probably, because it is just crap. Oh, look at this. It's a mug, or those kind of things. Anyway, another film I saw was Elevation, which will be on Prime by the time you watch this. It stars Anthony Mackie and Marina Barker, and we talked about the trailer a couple of months ago, I think, actually.
I remember, yeah, we did.
It's the one where the monsters won't cross 8,000 feet for some reason. They won't go that high. The film does explain why, and it's kind of dumb, but it's fine as a movie. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was quite engaging the way that it talked about the effect of isolation on different generations of people. So you have Anthony Mackie and Marina Baccarin's character. They're the older characters, and they've sort of resigned themselves to being in survival mode. Then you've got a younger character who is really frustrated by the fact that she's just stuck in this small bubble of people. Recent events in the world may be conjured up when you're watching it as a comparison. She's like, yeah, this sucks. I just want to see people. I want to get out of here. I don't care how dangerous it is, etc. It's the frustration that comes with that level of isolation and how different people react to that. That's an interesting idea in itself. It suffers in its set pieces, though. They're just really dull. The marketing talks about it's the same producers as A Quiet Place, so immediately you're inviting comparisons to that. And it's a similar idea as it's a high concept that you can play with, but it's not quite as engaging as a threat, because the threat of, if I make too much noise, I might die, is ever present. Whereas as long as we're above this elevation, we are perfectly safe. Leaves less options for terror. It only becomes a problem when you run out of food or something and you have to go and get some by crossing the line. So it's very limited in the scope of the threat, I think, and they have to manufacture reasons for them to cross the line to go get stuff. But I didn't find the set pieces that engaging, and I think it loses sight of its theme in the second half. But it is only 90 minutes long as well, so it's reasonably engaging for that period of time, and it's got good actors performing very well in it. So you could do worse as a 90-minute viewing experience. Just don't expect to be scared at all. So it's all right. The last thing I saw, as we record, actually, the embargo lifts in 12 hours. I watched Section 31, the Star Trek movie.
Oh.
It is dreadful. It is borderline unwatchable. It's so bad. I've unfortunately seen it twice because I wanted to take notes for my review, where I got a long list of spoilers that I'm not allowed to talk about, which basically limits me to saying it's a bunch of morally reprehensible people that go on a mission together and maybe they don't get along.
But Star Trek.
But it is, in theory, Star Trek. But I think, actually, if you remove any reference to Star Trek from the script, it would make no difference, which in some ways is a good thing, because it, in theory, makes it more accessible. But in practice, it just turns it into a generic sci-fi action movie with ineptly directed action and ineptly edited action. So it's just nothing. Also, it's Section 31. Shouldn't it be a spy thriller?
You'd think so.
But it's not. I've said this before, I've said this many times, but I think the current stewards of the Star Trek franchise don't understand why Section 31 was so compelling in the first place. And also, I don't think they have seen the episodes of Deep Space Nine in which they appeared. So there's no understanding. They're just a covert black ops unit. That's all they are. And they're indistinguishable from any other covert black ops unit, rather than being effectively this poison that exists within the Federation that secretly keeps it running. It's the thing that people in positions of authority know about but turn their head away from, because it allows them to maintain their utopia and keep their hands clean. That's the interesting thing about it. But it's not something that's persisted to the modern iteration of the franchise.
The other problem with diluting a concept enough so it doesn't really seem like part of the franchise that it is a part of, then it does raise a question of why should it be part of that in the first place? So with the Section 31 movie being so disconnected to Star Trek as a whole, then why did it need to be a Star Trek movie in the first place?
Because Michelle Yeoh, for some reason, still wanted to do it. That's the only reason it exists.
I actually forgot about that.
I think after she won her Oscar, someone may have asked her, it's like, see that Star Trek thing where we're going, that TV series we're going to make, are you still interested? And she's like, yes. And they're like, we'll make it a movie instead. And I'm glad that it is only a 100-minute movie. Yeah, it's 100 minutes. Rather than a 8-episode TV series that, honestly, I would have stopped watching. I would have got maybe 2 episodes in and ditched it. If it was this story but stretched into an 8-episode series, I wouldn't have continued with it, because it's just not good. It's just really, really bad. They have a franchise connection in Rachel Garrett, who is the captain of the Enterprise C in Yesterday's Enterprise, an episode of Star Trek that everybody likes. And she's not a particularly well-defined character in that episode, because, spoiler alert, she's in like 2 scenes and then she dies. But you have the younger version of her, and she's played by brunette Felicity from Arrow when she joined that hacktivist group.
Oh, yeah.
Casey Roll, the actress's name is. But it's just a name. It's not got anything to do with anything. There's mention of her wanting to be captain one day. Okay, well, lots of people who are in Star Trek want to be captain one day, so it's hardly a defining trait, is it?
Yeah, so that'll all sounds really disappointingly generic.
I was actually hoping that the twist would be that she's not the same Rachel Garrett. Turns out Starfleet's a big organisation and there's more than one of them.
That would at least be something.
Yeah. You mean you thought I wanted to be captain? No, not me. Never.
You really thought this thing that I told you had no reason to assume was a lie? How dumb are you?
So watch it at your own peril. I wouldn't recommend it. That's it for me in terms of what I've been watching. Do you have anything to plug at the moment?
I do not know. I have remained creatively inactive.
Okay. I don't know what I've got to plug. I may or may not be on podcasts over on Film Stories by the time this comes out. I do have a recording of Real Talk to sum up 2024 in a couple of days, but I don't know if it'll be out before this is. If it is, it'll be linked in the show notes. If not, I will link the main feed for Real Talk in the show notes. So either way, you can go looking for it if you want to hear it. I'm still not sure I'm going to sum up 2024 because I can't remember what I saw in early part of the year. I actually can't remember what I saw before December in 2024. So it could be my favourite movies or just War of the Rohirrim, Sonic 3 and Kraven the Hunter. Kraven the Hunter, a movie that I slept through quite a lot of. But yeah, those are my three favourite movies of 2024 because they're the only three I can remember watching at this moment in time.
I would need to actually remember what I watched when and when it was actually made because my memories are like a giant generic slurry right now, and I can't remember what happened in relation to when, more than like a week ago.
Maybe we should get in the habit of updating Letterboxd.
I never actually started a Letterboxd account.
I have one, but every time I decide, right, I'm going to get back into this, I'm going to keep a log of what I'm watching and things, I quickly abandon it because it starts to feel like admin work, which is what I do for a day job, and it's not what I want to be doing when I'm at home. I just have this visceral aversion to doing it.
I actually used to keep spreadsheets of everything that I'd watched and read and listened to throughout a year. And I lost everything I'd done when I needed to do an emergency format on my computer. And then I just couldn't be bothered starting up again.
Yeah, fair enough. So it seems Letterboxd would be the solution if either of us could be bothered to do it.
Damn that laziness.
Damn it. Can someone not do it for me? Can I hire an assistant log this film for me? Or maybe every time I book a cinema ticket, it just updates it automatically. That'd be nice. Some kind of linkage.
That would be pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it's not going to happen though. Cineworld's app is bad enough. It's not going to connect to anything. All right, let's get on to the trailers. We have a few this month. It's a bit of a weird month for trailers, but we'll do our best. Let's start with The King of Kings, the story of Jesus, where Oscar Isaac plays Jesus, Mark Hamill is someone, and other actors are voicing someone as well. I don't really have much to say about it other than the animation looks cool and creative. I'm not especially against the notion of telling a story about Jesus in animated form because, as far as I'm concerned, he's a fictional character anyway, so it's just another medium to tell that story. I quite liked that one. Was it The Prince of Egypt? That was the Moses story?
Yes, it was.
With Patrick Stewart in it. Again, a religious story. And I always remember this. Someone at school that I knew who was very religious and didn't like the fact that other people weren't religious. He was one of those people. I told him I'd watched that movie on TV when it was on, and he's like, but you don't believe in God. Why did you watch that? And I'm like, well, I don't believe in vampires either, but I watch Buffy, so what's the difference? It's just another fictional thing that might be interesting. So, yeah, I don't have any issues with this as a concept. I know that it's part of a collection of projects that are going to be religious education pieces, maybe, but it seems like there's some effort put in here to actually make it fun and engaging, so I'm all for that, actually.
Yeah, with a lot of biblical stories, the way the story is told almost always leans into the religious aspect of it. But for this one, it seems to be more about the actual story and the events. So rather than being a Christian educational movie, it's more like a tale from Christian mythology.
Yeah, in the same way that you would watch one of the ancient Egypt stories or what have you.
Exactly, yeah.
I haven't seen Ridley Scott's Exodus, but I think that was similarly disconnected from the actual religious aspect of it.
I can't remember if I'd seen that.
If you did, it doesn't sound like it made an impression on you, so that's equally as valid. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this looks fine. I think it might annoy some people because of who they've cast to voice Jesus and things.
Yes, because as we know, Jesus should always be played by a white guy.
Yes, a man that was born in the Middle East.
Precisely. Because how else would they know that he was a son of God unless he was pure in his appearance?
Yeah, crazy. But yeah, this could be worth watching.
I'm slightly more interested in it after having watched the trailer than I was beforehand.
Which is the job of a trailer, so good job. Whoever did this trailer, fantastic. All right, we'll move on to, we have a collection of some horror stuff, so it's good you're here. Let's start with The Woman in the Yard, which seems to be about a scary woman in robes sitting in the yard, and then she's there to tell people that they're doomed or something. I don't really have a lot to say. I think the poem was suitably creepy, and I quite liked the unmoving, mysterious figure just sitting there. That's also quite a creepy image. But once it started doing let's turn the camera upside down and let's have people getting dragged through hallways or whatever it was, I felt it was less interesting at that point.
Yeah, that was unnecessary and a little disappointing.
You should have ended on as soon as she spoke, maybe.
Yes, definitely. It's starting to seem now that folk horror is something that more and more people are becoming aware of as a concept, or at least something that they can vaguely identify, even if they don't know what it's called. And what makes them really interesting is that the weird-ass goings on in them might be supernatural, or it might just be a bunch of weirdos living in the woods. And because everything's going on, like the way that people live and things they believe in and things that are happening, they're beyond things that most people would encounter in their day-to-day lives, so they genuinely don't understand it. And it's that fear of the unknown being basically made manifest is what I've always loved about folk horror, because the stories don't have specific rules that they need to play by, because that's the whole point of them. And so because of that, literally anything could actually happen. And trying to decide whether or not what's happening has a rational explanation can be part of the fun.
Yeah, so it's difficult to tell from this trailer, because it looks like it might be interesting to a point, and then it'll just turn into jump scares and nonsense.
Possibly, yes. Or it could just be that was how the trailer was cut, because they think that's what's going to pull people in.
Maybe. Yeah, you just won't know. But if it looks generic, then that might turn people off from watching it as well.
Again, yeah, it's difficult to say. Can't be sure exactly what they're going for.
Yeah. Right, the next one is The Monkey, which we've got another trailer for this, adapted from short story written by Stephen King. It looks very cheesy, actually. I didn't get that impression from the last trailer, but this one looks quite cheesy, tongue-in-cheek, which I think is a bit of fun, actually. I think it looks a lot of fun. It might be just I can sit and watch it and not have to take it too seriously.
This is still kind of confusing me, because I'm really not sure what tone they're actually trying to go for. How about the first trailer? That was basically a series of horrifically violent acts being set to jaunty, friendly music, which just gave this massive tonal dissonance. And this one, the dialogue and the actions and situations, they're all things that you'd get in a comedy horror film. But the way that it's actually presented is something that's to be taken seriously, even though its content suggests that it shouldn't be. And genuinely don't know how to take that.
Yeah, I was drawn to the cheesiness. That grabbed my attention, actually, more than it has in the past. If it gives me that, then I'll probably enjoy it. But I think if it takes it seriously, I might not enjoy it.
Exactly, and that's what's concerning me. It's possible that once I actually watch the film, then it'll be more apparent what it was they're going for. But just at the moment, I really can't be sure one way or the other.
Well, you'll find out in a few weeks.
Yes.
If you go and see it.
I probably will.
Next up, we have Heart Eyes. And my first note is this a transparent attempt to create a new iconic slasher villain? And then the second note is, if so, what sets this apart from the other ones? Nothing. It's just the same things, but he's wearing a slightly different mask to his forebearers.
Basically, yeah.
Doesn't fill me with much interest, this, to be honest. How many times have we seen I think we're safe, and then the knife pokes through the door thing? How many times have we seen that? It wasn't an actual question where I was looking for the number.
I was just trying to think of a way of responding that's just not going to descend into a massive rant about the disrespect and lack of understanding that slasher movies still receive and likely always will.
Yeah, no one seems to understand what makes them good.
Exactly, because what makes an interesting slasher movie is following a group of people that you actually care about trying to escape from a relentless killer who may or may not have a personal connection to one of them. And the very fact that you care about the people is what makes them engaging, because you genuinely want them to escape these deadly situations, while at the same time knowing that most, if not all of them, won't. But it seems that what a lot of filmmakers think people like about slashers is watching a group of variably obnoxious people being picked off one by a masked maniac. And that's not interesting. It's how you tell that story that makes it interesting.
Yeah, and this just looks like they're following the cliche playbook step by step.
Yeah. Scream was almost 30 years ago now, and yet everything that it affectionately pointed out about slasher movies that by the mid to late 90s were starting to get a bit stale, they're still being repeated now. I don't understand why more people don't get this.
Well, the reason is that people are making films but don't want to do the work to understand how you make a film. That's why you have a lot of really high budget yet amateurish looking stuff at the moment. It's just people that don't know what they're doing, but they think they know what they're doing. It was a big thing with action films before John Wick came along, really. This idea of directors making action movies, but they don't understand how the cinematic language of an action movie works. So it's just an incoherent mess. And then John Wick comes along and people think it's great because it's actually just competent.
Yes, and unfortunately, a lot of filmmakers took the wrong message from that one as well, thinking that what audiences wanted was more films about a middle-aged man on a rampage.
Taken has a lot to answer for in that respect as well.
Definitely.
So, Heart Eyes, do you think he will join the pantheon of iconic slasher villains like Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and other ones?
No, I think the only thing it'll do will give rise to people making 4 variations on the same joke of imagining the killer but as a different emoji.
Yeah, there we go. So, boring and generic, but it's happening. Just in time for Valentine's Day, so there you go.
And that's another thing that kind of annoyed me. It's released a week before Valentine's Day.
Yeah, that's usually the case, so it's in cinemas in time for Valentine's Day.
I know, but it seems to make more sense from a marketing standpoint.
It's like when Christmas movies come out in November, so that they're just hanging around before Christmas. Unlike Red One, which was out in October and gone by the middle of November, but that's a different story.
Yeah, and I also remember when we got Bad Santa in the cinemas, wasn't it like April or something?
Maybe, yeah, I've never seen it, but you could be right. Very nuts. And of course, Iron Man 3, which is a Christmas movie, but it was released in the summer. I mean, it's set at Christmas. I wouldn't say it's a Christmas movie. Again, that's another debate that we're not going to get into right here, because I already got through Christmas and it was fine.
And also, the main reason Iron Man 3 was set at Christmas is because it was written by Shane Black.
That's also true. All right, let's move on to Opus, which is about a cult surrounding a pop star. And my only real note here is I'm not sure this film will be as clever as it clearly thinks that it is. Its message seems to be cults are bad and people get sucked into them. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, but what else?
We've got John Malkovich.
Yeah, but he'll do anything. I don't think John Malkovich is known for making good choices, is he? He was in a Transformers movie.
He's known for being quite good in mediocre material.
Yeah, but he seems to be someone that will just do anything for a paycheck, which is the Michael Caine approach. He just kept working regardless of the quality of the material because he got paid, and it's fine. And when he talks about, I forget what movie it is he talks about, but he talks about, why did you do this movie? And it was 3 weeks in Hawaii or whatever it was.
Yeah, and I think it was one of the Jaws movies that he was in. He said that he's never seen it, but he has seen the house that it bought.
I like the house that it bought, yeah. So John Malkovich might have a similar approach to taking on movies, which, fair enough. And in theory, it adds a bit of gravitas and presence to a project that doesn't have a lot of it. But whenever I see him, I'm thinking, he's done a lot of crappy stuff, so... Could be another crappy thing. And I just don't like the look of this at all.
It started out trying to be Suspiria, and then quickly realised that wasn't going to happen, so tried to be something else, and then failed.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say on that, really.
No.
Next up, we have A Working Man, which is David Ayer's next movie, starring Jason Statham. I've actually grown to really enjoy these Jason Statham action movies. I thought The Beekeeper was a ton of fun. It's schlocky and ridiculous, but it's good fun. Especially if he tries an accent, which I couldn't really tell from the trailer if he was doing here or not.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either.
He definitely was in The Beekeeper, which was very funny. Jason Statham is not a good actor, but he tries. He really jumps in feet first. And this one is written by Sylvester Stallone, I believe. He did a movie before that was written by Stallone. It was actually written by Stallone for Stallone, and then it took so long to get made that he felt he was too old for it, so he gave it to Statham instead. Can't remember what it was called. I don't think it was that great. But this one... it looks quite fun. I'll definitely give it a watch. And as long as it's just a silly couple hours of Jason Statham tearing through people, I'll probably vibe quite well with it.
Yeah, if you start watching this trailer, knowing absolutely nothing about the film at all, even the title, from the moment you see a single shot of a character played by Jason Statham living anonymously in a manual labour job that likely pays in cash, you know exactly every single thing that is going to happen throughout this entire film.
He's running from a life that he lived before, and he's going to get sucked right back into it.
It doesn't even matter that the trailer tells you so much of the plot, because you could already guess that was going to happen, or at the very least, something very similar to it.
For sure, yeah. Statham knows his lane and he stays in it, and that's fine.
Exactly, and he seems perfectly content doing it, and every once in a while results in something a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I will eagerly await this. Not that eagerly, but it'll be this'll kill a Saturday afternoon or something like that.
Exactly.
It's that kind of movie. The Alto Knights is next. It's Robert De Niro and Robert De Niro. So he's doing a Tom Hardy, or a more recent example, Jim Carrey, playing against himself. And it's a gangster movie, it's a mob movie, it's a crime movie. So it's the sort of material that he's very well suited for, isn't it?
Exactly. If I'm being honest, I've never really been that into gangster movies.
Me neither.
Conceptually, they just don't appeal to me. As often the case is, you're following these characters who are all violent criminals, yet you're supposed to connect and empathise with them, which I find very difficult. And it just often just seems to be the same kind of stories of ambition and betrayal and counter-betrayal and comeuppance and downfall.
And in this case, there's the mob boss who's considered too old to be the mob boss, so someone wants to take him down a peg and take his place.
Yeah, I'll sit down and watch a story like that, and I just won't care.
But De Niro on De Niro could be a novelty that's worth engaging with, at least.
At least that, yes. Honestly, the notion of watching that is really the only thing that personally appeals to me.
Yeah, it's the only thing that really seems to stand out about it for me, which I suppose is what they were going for. Otherwise, you would just cast 2 actors, right?
Exactly, yeah.
You've just increased the budget because you have to do all this split screen and whatever it is that you do nowadays in order to have actors acting against themselves. For Sonic 3, Jim Carrey did a fantastic job, and so did the effects team. You would forget that they were the same actor sometimes, even though it was very clear that they were the same actor. But it seemed like there was 2 people there, and there was no disconnect. Yeah. So, good stuff. Can De Niro pull it off? Maybe. Some people will find out, perhaps not me. Next up is In the Lost Lands, which is Paul W.S. Anderson of Resident Evil and Mortal Kombat fame, doing a George R.R. Martin story, which is just something else he was doing instead of finishing Game of Thrones. So he was making this. Mila Jovovich is in it, which isn't surprising because they're married and she's in everything he makes, because that's how they met, working together on Resident Evil. It's always good to say Dave Bautista. It looks very over the top and silly. I quite like Paul W.S. Anderson as a director because I feel like he's unashamed of who he is and what he is capable of.
Exactly, yes.
Basically, his wheelhouse is making films that could be straight to DVD, but strangely aren't.
Exactly. Big, dumb, effects-laden sci-fi action movies.
Yeah, and he's good in that wheelhouse, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, some of his stuff is pretty duff, but also at the same time, some of his stuff is pretty good. I'm one of the people that will argue in favour of Alien vs. Predator.
Well, there you go.
I think it's perfectly fine. I don't think it's one of the worst things ever made. I don't even think it's the worst Alien movie.
I think much of the Alien franchise after the second one has been kind of superfluous.
Yes, including Alien Romulus, which I thought was awful.
Yes, look, it's all the Alien movies in one.
Yeah, and you'll be able to listen to our Alien Day special on that in April, so look forward to that, because we're doing that this year. In the Lost Lands, I'll probably watch it. It also looks fairly incomprehensible. I watched the trailer and I had no idea what it was actually supposed to be about. We can go out to the Lost Lands and there's magic and stuff and loads of explosions and that weird CGI filter look that you get in all these sorts of films.
Yes, and also there might be some shapeshifting being involved. Characters transforming into animals, and there's also a bunch of demons running around the place.
Could be fun, could be a mess. We don't know.
And a random band of people who appear to be derived from the Templars, who in the film may well actually even be referred to as Templars.
Turns out it's a stealth Assassin's Creed spin-off. It'll probably be really dumb, but may just be enjoyable if you're into that sort of thing. If you let yourself enjoy it, maybe you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, that's basically exactly what I think about it as well. It's going to be stupid, it's going to be forgettable, and it's going to be a lot of fun while watching it. I remember that I enjoyed watching Monster Hunter. I'm not going to tell you a single thing that happened in it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I know it got widely panned. I do enjoy some of the Resident Evil movies.
I do as well, the first 2 in particular.
I couldn't tell you which one after that is which.
Exactly, yeah, that's my problem.
Or how many there are, even.
Yeah, same.
I think there's 5, but I'm not sure.
5 or 6. It also doesn't help that none of them have numbers in their names either.
No, it's very difficult. And certainly as a series, it's better than the Welcome to Raccoon City reboot that they tried to do. Or that Netflix show that I stopped watching.
I actually didn't mind that.
I watched like 2 episodes and I was like, nah, not for me.
Well, if nothing else, it was interesting seeing Lance Reddick as Wesker.
Yeah, which people didn't like because he doesn't have blonde hair. No other reason.
At all.
Anyway, let's talk about Suits LA now. The second spin-off of Suits, as it turns out, which is something I learned today. I didn't know.
It's something I learned right now.
It was based on the Gina Torres character, and it was named after her.
Okay.
It ran for like 1 season.
I've never watched a single episode of this show.
All right, okay. Well, I watched some of Suits and then got fed up with it and stopped watching it. I was like, I get it. After 4 seasons, I get it. Or however many I watched. I can't remember. I gave up at some point. Actually, when I started watching it, I didn't realise that Meghan Markle was in it. I didn't know that before watching it, which was a bit of a shock. And now she just makes Netflix specials that I'll never watch because I respect her desire for privacy. So I will respect it by not watching any of the stuff she makes.
Yep, seems reasonable to me. I think the only thing I've seen her in or remember her in was a few episodes of the second season of Fringe.
Oh, I must have seen that, but I wouldn't remember her from that.
She was this new FBI agent who was there to give some kind of religious perspective to the weird science stuff going on. And then the writers completely forgot about her and she just disappears.
All right, well, I don't remember that at all. Actually, I don't remember seeing that. I have seen Fringe season 2, but it was so long ago, so I don't remember that character or her at all. But fine. So Suits LA, this teaser is very short, but it looks like basically the same show as Suits. They even point out that Stephen Amell's character is just like Harvey, a character from the original show. So it just feels like they're making the same show, but in a different city, which pretty much doesn't surprise me for a spin-off like this. One thing I do have in my notes is Stephen Amell looks weird clean-shaven. I don't like it.
I was literally just about to say that. I don't like it. It's wrong. Just doesn't suit him.
No, he needs his designer stubble, doesn't he?
Yep, definitely.
Weird. But he's in this, and he's going to play the arrogant, I'm the best lawyer ever, and there'll be nobody to argue with him because he is the best lawyer ever.
Yes, because he's the best at absolutely everything, and therefore he will be better than everyone. He'll show everyone how much better he is.
Yes. Is this presence of Stephen Amell going to compel you to watch this at all?
Honestly, probably not.
Fair enough.
His presence was only just enough to make me aware of the show's existence.
Another bit of casting that happened was that Matt Letcher, who played Reverse Flash, or one of them, is going to be his dad in the show.
Okay.
I thought they were about the same age, unless it's his dad in flashbacks. Maybe he's a time traveller. I don't know. But I thought they were about the same age.
Probably, though Matt Letcher's Wikipedia page doesn't actually say how old he is.
If you Google Matt Letcher age, it might tell you.
Okay, apparently he's 54.
Okay. And Stephen Amell's 40-something, I'm assuming?
I think so, yeah. I think he's a little bit older than I am.
Yeah, that's still definitely close enough in age to not be his dad.
Yeah, he's 43.
Okay, so I'm guessing flashbacks.
That would make sense.
I'm guessing his dad either died or ran away or something, and he'll be depicted in flashbacks. Maybe we'll find out. I don't know. I might watch the first episode just to see what it's like because of Stephen Amell, but I can't imagine I'll continue with it for very long. Maybe if it was like a 20-minute, I can watch it while I'm making dinner sort of show, but it's going to be a 45-minute.
Demand your full engagement.
Yeah, I'm going to have to actually sit and watch this. But yeah, we'll see. But Stephen Amell, he got work, so good for him. All right, next up, The Last of Us Season 2. What's your connection to The Last of Us? I've played the games several times, and I've seen the first season of the TV show once, so I know this story already. So what's your view on it?
I've seen the first season of the show. I've never played any of the games. I've watched some YouTube playthroughs of some of it, and I'm dimly aware of the basics of the ongoing story just from reading what people have been commenting about the series.
The perfectly normal internet reactions to the second game.
Yeah, because as everyone knows, video game fans are incredibly understanding when it comes to things not being exactly how they have decided that they should be.
Yes, and they're definitely very tolerant of characters turning out to be lesbians.
Why is this still a thing? Seriously.
I don't know. Not to get too far into it, but it is very clear that some people were only pretending to be tolerant because that was the expected thing. And now it's maybe not quite the expected thing because it's actually endorsed by Western governments to be a racist or otherwise intolerant scumbag. So therefore, it's fine to just bleat on about the way you think things should be.
It's infuriating and exhausting in equal measure.
Yes. So in terms of the second season of this show, you have some idea of what's coming, yeah?
Vaguely, yes. Not a huge amount beyond Caitlin Deaver's coming to kill Joel.
That's what she wants to do, yes. Let's not say whether she succeeds or not.
That's largely where my awareness of the larger scope of things ends.
Okay. Well, my perspective on this teaser is it all seems to be in there. It teases a lot of the stuff that I would expect. I do have issues with Bella Ramsey definitely not looking 4 years older like Ellie is supposed to be between games. They probably just should have waited. That's the problem when you're counting on people being a certain age. It's just not going to happen within a year. They're not going to look 4 years older. It's just going to be something I'll either have to accept or get off the train, I suppose. And I'll see how I feel when I actually watch the show. I wonder if I'll have the same issue I had with the first season of the show, though, because as much as I loved it, I also felt like as an adaptation, it didn't stray too far, or it didn't stray at all, really, from the narrative of the game. It strayed in terms of the execution of the narrative of the game. So it was things like they don't spend hours wandering around a university because in gameplay, that's fine because you're exploring and enjoying it. But in a TV show, it maybe would be a bit dull. And similar with the number of infected encounters you have in the show versus the game. Once you do it once you have them sneaking around in the dark trying not to be heard once, you've done it. You don't need to do it every episode. So I understood it from that point of view. But also it just seemed like it was Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey playing the same cutscenes that I already watched from the game. And I was expecting, because I do expect adaptations to take some liberties and make some changes. Maybe a character dies sooner or lives longer. Things change a little bit. They go to different places. I don't know. Just what happens in adaptations, really. But in this, it was just a very straight adaptation. So the show never surprised me. It was, I bet you this happens next, and then it would. And that got to be a little bit disappointing after a while. So yes, I think it was all very well done. But also, I think a one-to-one adaptation doesn't really work. I mean, obviously, if you've not played the game, then you won't know. But I know, and that's the only perspective I've got.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance to strike. It's the flip side of what we were saying earlier about Section 31. Have too little something in it, then why be part of that in the first place? Or you adapt something too faithfully, then why bother doing it in the first place?
Yeah, and we've all seen adaptations of books and things where characters live way longer than they did in the book. Game of Thrones was famous for that, wasn't it? They transplanted characters to different places and killed them earlier or later, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And people were fine with it. I felt like The Last of Us would do that too, but it didn't. Not at all. So it was a bit weird in that respect. I don't know if season 2 will be the same sensibility, but I imagine it will be. I imagine it will be very faithful. So I think the only surprise, in a way, I'm going to get is what the cutoff point is, because it's going to be told over 2 seasons because the game's massive. So see what the cutoff point is in season 2 and maybe how they'll structure it. I don't know if they'll do a Lord of the Rings thing. For those that don't know, the Lord of the Rings books, you had the Fellowship of the Ring, which was 2 books, and then you had the Two Towers, which was split up between the Fellowship and then Frodo and Sam in separate books, with the events occurring concurrently. But when Peter Jackson made the movie, obviously he combined the events. The Last of Us is structured somewhat similarly in the second game, where you play a lot of the game as one character and then you play a lot of the game as another character. And I wonder if the show will have the concurrent events play out concurrently. So you'll either have an episode of one character and then the next episode will be the other character, or whether they'll cut between them within an episode. So I guess from a structural point of view, I'm more interested to see how they do it.
So it's actually an interesting perspective to take to it.
It's a weird adaptation because it's one of those, it's good, but I have criticisms, which I suppose I could say about anything that I watch, but it's good, but also I don't like it. Or there's major things about it I don't like. I wish it was more surprising. That's what I was wanting from it. But actually, when they were talking about making a Last of Us TV show, I was like, can we not just have another story in that world with different people? Because I've already seen the Joel and Ellie story. It was great. I've already done that. But I know that a lot of viewers won't have played the game. And I'm just thinking, yeah, but watch a Let's Play on YouTube and you'll get it. Like you did.
Exactly, because I'm really no kind of gamer anymore. But when particular games are quite strongly narrative driven, then I'd still want to experience them. I'd like to know what they're like and what's in them, really.
The Last of Us Let's Play, no commentary. Put that into YouTube and you'll find it. And hopefully someone that's quite good at the game so they just don't keep dying and you have to watch them try the same thing over and over again. So what I'm saying is don't watch my Let's Play, if I ever did one, because it happens to me a lot. No, watch my Let's Play. Watch me fail continuously in certain sections. I will see how this goes. It comes out in April. So we'll see what the structure is. That's the interesting part for me at the moment.
Yeah.
Last trailer, Daredevil Born Again, which is season 4 of the Netflix show, but also not. One of the major criticisms I saw after the trailer is being called a massive visual downgrade from the Netflix show, which is definitely true. However, my counter to that is it's a massive visual upgrade from the usual Disney Plus Marvel fare.
Accurate.
It's somewhere in between the two, I think. There are some striking visual elements to it, but also it looks a little bit generically bland and washed out, like the more recent output has been. I am excited to see Charlie Cox back in this role, so that has my attention. Not the mess that was in She-Hulk. Let's not talk about that, because that was, to my mind, a complete abomination of the character, and I don't want to think about it.
I still thought it was fun, and I'm not going to apologise for it.
Well, you can think that if you want.
You can sit there and be wrong, I don't care.
You have every right to be wrong. I don't mind. I have no problem with that. It looks a lot darker than you might expect from Marvel these days, which is in keeping with the character. You get a brief glimpse of the Punisher. It seems like him and Fisk are trying to be friendly at the moment, which I imagine won't last very long. Fisk is mayor, apparently, which happened in Echo, which I haven't seen. So there's something here, I think.
I watched the first episode of Echo.
The one that Daredevil's in. That was the only episode I watched as well. He's in it for like 2 minutes.
I'm going to finish it eventually. I just don't know how long it's going to take.
It's one of those completely under the radar sort of things. And apparently it was one of those, it's really obvious that this has been torn apart and rebuilt into what it is now.
Oh god, yeah, even the first episode was a narrative mess.
Well, the first episode was largely summaries of what happened in Hawkeye, wasn't it?
It was, but if you didn't know that, then you'd wonder what the hell story it was telling.
Yeah, it's weird. But Daredevil Born Again, it definitely looks more interesting than a lot of what Marvel have been offering of late. Hopefully the fact that they threw out half a season that they'd already made and then started from scratch has made a positive difference.
When things like that happen, it's usually either a positive difference or a very negative one. There's very rarely any in between.
Yeah, what sometimes happens though is that you'll get people that very passionately hate the new thing and then they'll say, I want to see the old thing, I bet you that was way better. And no, it might have just been bad in a different way. It's like when all the information came out about what Colin Trevorrow's version of Star Wars Episode 9 was going to be. People were like, this would have been way better. And I just looked over what was planned thinking, this doesn't sound any better at all. It's just differently bad.
Snyder fans have got so much to answer for.
They are right about one thing. The Snyder cut is better than the Joss Whedon, shall we say, construction. Because I wouldn't say it's a film. I wouldn't call it a Joss Whedon film. He was brought in to make patches of something that was already there.
And then decided the entire thing needed to be redone.
Yeah. I actually think that the Joss Whedon version does something more interesting with some of the characters than the Snyder version does, because his version of Batman is just as invincible as Superman is. But Joss Whedon puts in scenes revealing that the reason that Batman wants the Justice League to exist is because he will probably die at some point and he needs heroes that are ready to pick up in his stead, which is a really good character motivation. But anyway, that's enough about the Snyder Cut. What do you think of Daredevil Born Again so far?
Daredevil was always my favourite of the Netflix Marvel shows, and I am absolutely happy to have more of it. And I'm also going to be interested to see how much it is going to ultimately tie in with the larger Marvel universe, because the previous series was semi-canon, but not really, and then decanonized, but now it's the past from this season, which now is canon to the MCU. And
as long as you ignore all the stuff that can't be canon.
Basically, yeah.
The Netflix shows are all considered canon. I haven't seen The Punisher because the 3 episodes or so I watched of the first season bored the bejesus out of me, so I just didn't continue. But apparently the second season is set during the period of what would be the blip, and obviously the blip hasn't happened.
Think so? I honestly can't remember.
I think you'll see newspaper headlines that identify what year it is and things.
Yeah, it makes sense. Sounds about right.
They took the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. approach in a way that, well, they're not making us a big part of their thing, so we're just going to do our own thing. And then suddenly, oh no, you are part of our thing, as long as you ignore all the stuff that can't be. Like the big dragon bones under New York and all that. Forget about them. They didn't happen.
I am quite looking forward to this series. And I'm also going to be intrigued to know exactly what occasions Daredevil uses each of his masks for.
Does he know they're different colours?
Well, if you're to believe She-Hulk, then they would have been made by a camp and obnoxious tailor.
Yeah. He also had his tailor at the Netflix show as well. Melvin, I think his name was, that guy.
Don't remember the name, but I do remember the character, though, yeah.
He made a Stiltman suit that was in the background of a scene as well. But yes, that's a joke that's flying around, as in, do you think Daredevil knows he has different colour costumes?
Well, considering that he didn't make them himself, so he would have given design specifications to whoever did make them, so I'm guessing yes.
Sometimes in the comics he can hear colours, but they play around with his powers in various ridiculous ways in the comics.
Well, that's what superhero comics are all about.
Yeah. And I don't think they've ever been all that consistent with his powers in the Netflix show either.
Yeah, whatever most dramatically suits the situation.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get a single-take corridor fight. They did hire the stunt coordinator that did that.
I'd be disappointed if they didn't.
Karen and Foggy are there, so that's a good thing. I used to like those characters, but by the time you get to season 3, I hated them. I liked them in season 1, and then fell off a little bit after that with them, but it's good that they're back. You have the Punisher back, so that's good.
Bullseye.
I wonder if they're keeping secret cameos from, say, Luke Cage and Jessica Jones from us at this point.
Maybe.
Probably not Iron Fist. It's all canon except Iron Fist, apparently, because no one seemed to like it. And everyone was convinced he should have been Asian for some reason.
Yeah, well, that's just a very quick way of demonstrating that they don't understand the character.
Yeah. He's supposed to be white boy learns the ways, isn't he?
Exactly. The fact that he's a white guy learning Asian mysticism is literally the point of the character. So in a way, actually making him Asian would make him more generic.
Yeah, it would be Asian American guy learns the mystical ways, which would be possibly more problematic.
Maybe. Or possibly equally as problematic as a white guy teaching martial arts to an Asian woman.
Yeah. And then at that point, what would make him just not Shang-Chi as well?
That is a good point, yeah.
But anyway, we'll see what happens there. I am interested in this, if for no other reason than to see what they've done to it. Although I'm not saying that the Netflix show is this unclearable high bar of quality, because season 2 exists. And season 2 is terrible. It's hard to watch, honestly. And season 3 is a return to some form, but it's not as good as season 1. It's just significantly better than season 2. And then the rest of the shows, I haven't really seen them all. I watched season 1 of Luke Cage, didn't really care for it. I watched 2 seasons of Jessica Jones, and season 2 broke me, so I didn't watch season 3. And then Iron Fist, I watched season 1 and haven't watched season 2. The Punisher, as I said, gave up after like 3 or 4 episodes because I just didn't like it. But that was the vibe with the Netflix shows eventually. It's like, oh, this is coming out. I can't wait to not watch it. It seemed to be the reaction that people had to it after a while.
Yeah, it's not a thing they want to watch. It's a thing they want to have watched.
Yeah, I wish I didn't have to sit through 13 hours of this. Thanks. You don't have to. You never do. We'll see. Charlie Cox getting to properly play the character again, we hope, is a good thing. He's been hanging around in Cameo City for quite a while, hasn't he?
Yes, he needs to be a centre of attention again.
Yeah, and soon he will be. All right, let's move out of trailers and talk about some of our pillar topics that we often talk about. Nothing from Marvel at the moment, so we'll move straight to DC. And we have one story. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow adds David Krumholtz and Emily Beecham as the parents of Supergirl. Which parents?
I believe it is the Kryptonian ones.
It doesn't say here, actually. It just says they will play Supergirl's parents. So it could be the adopted ones.
It wasn't in that announcement, but I've seen it mentioned elsewhere, although that may be people extrapolating information that's not been given.
Yeah, maybe. I like David Krumholtz and I like Emily Beecham. So, cool. Reasonable choices.
But yeah, both decent actors, both engaging to watch.
Yeah, there's nothing more to say about that, really. We don't even know which parents they're playing.
Exactly, not much more you can say about it.
But that's something that's happening. It's a film I'm looking forward to as well. I haven't read the Women of Tomorrow arc from the comic, but I'm told it's basically Supergirl goes John Wick.
Which can be a new experience.
Yeah, and we know that Jason Momoa is playing Lobo in the movie as well.
Which is just perfect.
Well, I said last month that you just paint him grey and you've got Lobo.
Exactly.
That means we'll probably never get a credible Aquaman ever again.
That's very likely, sadly.
Well, that's it for DC. So let's talk about Star Wars now. There's a couple of things. Ryan Gosling is in talks to star in Sean Levy's Star Wars movie that may never happen. The three-time Oscar nominee is in negotiations to topline the Star Wars feature project that will be directed by Sean Levy. Details on the project are harder to acquire than plans for an orbital planet killer. Ha ha ha. He's been developing his Star Wars feature since 2022, and Jonathan Tropper, who collaborated with him on films such as This Is Where I Leave You and The Adam Project, which I made fun of some months ago for being not a high pedigree of quality. There's nothing known about what kind of a Star Wars movie he's making, or if Kathleen Kennedy will just decide to bin it at some point, which could happen. But there's the joke that people like to make within the Star Wars fandom, such as it is. The prime setting period is 10 years after Return of the Jedi, which I don't think is actually accurate. I don't think anything's been set 10 years after Return of the Jedi. But I think there's been a lot of announcements where that has been said. So, yeah, I don't know. Well, we don't know anything about this again. Ryan Gosling in a Star Wars movie. I kind of feel about that I felt about, say, Woody Harrelson. It feels like it's a too famous actor having a Star Wars movie.
So it ends up a distraction because you've seen them as the actor, not the character.
Yeah, but I'm also not convinced I like Star Wars that much anymore, just because everything I've actually sat through has been so dull of late. You have Ahsoka, which I didn't like, Obi-Wan, which I didn't like, The Mandalorian, which I stopped watching, Skeleton Crew, which I haven't started watching.
Oh god, Skeleton Crew. I remember a while back there was those stupid AI videos people get make. What if Wes Anderson directed Lord of the Rings kind of thing?
Yeah, those things.
Well, Skeleton Crew is basically what if Steven Spielberg directed Star Wars?
Wasn't that just The Force Awakens?
What if Steven Spielberg directed Star Wars as an Amblin movie from the 80s?
Yeah, I know about the Amblin stuff because people have talked about that, but it's had a fairly solid positive response as a show.
I think I've watched 2 or 3 episodes so far, and I'm just bored.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, I wasn't interested enough to even watch it. I may do at some point, but I haven't been so bothered about it. The Acolyte I didn't like either, so there's definitely more Star Wars I didn't like than Star Wars I did like at this point, unless you count the actual sheer number of Clone Wars episodes that I enjoy. But I see that as one project that I liked.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Clone Wars is one thing, not 200 things or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is. Same with Rebels. I like that, but that doesn't mean I liked however many episodes of Rebels as a number of Star Wars things that I liked. Sean Levy, I mean, he's fine as a director, and he's probably well suited to make a fairly middle-of-the-road disposable Star Wars movie, I guess. But it'll probably never happen. Just like this next thing. James Mangold is talking about his new Star Wars movie, which he might get to make, actually, because he has enough cachet as a filmmaker, doesn't he? He has revealed, well, I think it was revealed before, but he's talked about how it's taking place in the very, very, very distant past, which could be tens of thousands of years before the original trilogy. Oh no, he does say 25,000 years before any known Star Wars movies takes place. It's an era and a playground that I've always wanted to explore and that I was inspired by as a teenager. I'm not that interested in being handcuffed by so much lore at this point that it's almost immovable and you can't please anybody. Yeah, fair enough. The question is, will you be allowed to make this movie?
Will you be allowed to create a canonical interpretation of this key moment in history? And how much will all the fans hate you when you try to do it?
Yeah. And will someone have a future premonition of Palpatine or something?
Yeah, or will the first Jedi and the first Sith be like brothers or something, or childhood best friends?
Yeah, there's a potential to turn it into a very biblical Star Wars movie, that kind of style, isn't there? It just depends what your technology's like at the time. Presumably there would have to be some kind of spacefaring ability.
I would assume so.
I was just looking up when was Knights of the Old Republic set, because I couldn't remember, but that's just under 4,000 years before A New Hope. So we're talking 20,000 years before Knights of the Old Republic. So yeah, it completely is the Wild West in terms of canon, isn't it? Which does appeal to me, at least conceptually. It'll be all down to the execution, I suppose.
Yeah, and sadly that's where a lot of things can fall flat.
James Mangold's capable, but the question is, will he be allowed to make the film he wants to make?
You would think after Logan, then the producers would just trust him to know what he's doing.
Yeah, but then he made Indiana Jones and wasn't allowed to just make that as well. So who knows? All right, next up, this is something I have no opinion on, really, because I haven't seen it, but Grimm is getting a reboot, although I think this article flip-flops between continuation and reboot as if it's the same thing, which it isn't. The exact premise of the Grimm movie is kept under wraps. It is believed to have ties to the series for die-hard fans, but could also be easily accessed by new viewers. So a spin-off is what they're saying here.
Yeah, well, I think being a bit vague in exactly what kind of thing it is, if it's like a spin-off or continuation or reboot or whatever, because they can't quite figure it out from the limited information that's been released so far.
Yeah.
I actually watched the entire series of Grimm and largely quite enjoyed it. It's an urban fantasy police procedural thing in a world that's basically populated by creatures from fairy tales who walk amongst us disguised as humans. They're all part of this humanoid species called Vessen, and there's these creatures that inspired monsters from legends and fairy tales. And the Grimm obviously refers to their brothers Grimm. A lot of the stories are modernised, loose reworkings of fairy tales from the collection. The very first episode involves what appears to be some large ferocious animal killing women wearing red.
It sounds kind of similar to Once Upon a Time conceptually, except Once Upon a Time is basically Disney mythology.
Kind of. It's more its own thing. It's not beholden to any specific rules established in mythology or fairy tales. The premise of it is a police officer discovers that he is a Grimm, which is someone who has the ability to perceive Vessen in their natural form rather than their human disguise. And as a result of this, the Grimms throughout history have generally seen it as their mission to just destroy Vessen when they find them, regardless of how destructive or benevolent or even harmless that they are. But because Nick, the main guy, wasn't raised with his mindset, he takes a more compassionate view towards them.
Let me guess, he falls in love with one.
He actually already has a girlfriend/fiancée at the start of the film who is human.
Okay.
Series, rather. There's a lot of world building within the society of these creatures, things like to do with prophecies and royalty and magical powers being inherited and transferred and developed and passed on and things like that. But one of the most interesting things about it was all of the different types of creatures that it brought in and the variably amusing names that each of them had. Most of the featured animals had their names as compound words of questionable German. One of the main characters is a creature called a Blutbad, German for bloodbath, I believe. He was a archetypal big bad wolf character. Then there's one's called Jägerbar, Jäger for hunter and bar for bear, because they're these bear creatures. It also pulls from other mythologies as well. I remember that there was one episode where the creature involved was called Koshchei, after a Russian folktale called Koshchei the Deathless, a guy who basically became unkillable by removing his heart and hiding it in a box. But anyway, to stop rambling, as I said, it's a continuation with links to the previous series that will be accessible to new viewers. What I suspect might happen will actually follow on from the end of the series itself, because there's a coda to the series at the end of the finale that takes place about 20 years in the future that involves the children of some of the main characters who formed their own hunting group. So it's possible that this new project might follow on from there. Or it might just be a completely different story, but set in the same world with the same rules. But I did overall quite enjoy Grimm, and so I'm actually quite interested to see what this is going to be like.
After 6 seasons, do you feel like we need more of this?
Absolutely not, no. Again, this is just another example of just let things end.
It's another example of our segment, nothing ever finishes anymore. This is just the latest thing, because NBC, I guess, need content, and they previously had this.
This absolutely for sure does not need to exist, but because it's going to exist, then I probably will check it out.
Okay, fair enough. I probably won't. It sounds a bit like the Teen Wolf movie to me, although I know the Teen Wolf movie was explicitly connected to the show.
Yes, so much so that it was basically an extended episode of the show, and despite being set like 15 years later, the characters were all exactly the same, and it was just boring. Did I do a review of it?
I don't know, you might have done. If you did, it'll be in the show notes.
Can't remember, actually.
You may have done. I can't remember.
I've just not bothered to use up any brain power recalling anything about the whole experience.
Yeah, seems fair. Move on to James Cameron teasing some details on Avatar Fire and Ash, which is actually out this year, crazily enough. You forget Avatar exists and then it's suddenly there. There'll be a trailer at some point.
Yes, and then I'll forget it exists again until I get reminded again.
So it's going to host a bunch of familiar faces, including Zoe Saldana, Kate Winslet, Jermaine Clement, Sam Worthington, who is billed fourth in that list, which is funny, even though he's the lead. Sigourney Weaver, David Thewlis, Giovanni Ribisi, Una Chaplin, Eddie Falco, Cliff Curtis, Stephen Lang, and more. What excites me as an artist who recently turned 70 and has kind of done all that stuff is not only the opportunity to get to do it again, Cameron tells Empire, It was an interview with Empire. But to get to a level of character and intrigue you haven't seen before in an Avatar movie, that wouldn't be hard, really, actually. They're starting to riff on it and twist on it in a way that's not been done before in the franchise, because if you're not making brave choices, you're wasting everyone's time and money. And there's rumours about there's like a fire tribe and then a wind tribe and all this stuff. He is attempting to expand it. I thought that Avatar 2 was visually very impressive, but not much else.
Same.
It had a lot of those, we'll explain this later, sort of introduction stuff. Why was there the Immaculate Conception of the Sigourney Weaver character? We'll tell you later. Which is, funny enough, connected to another James Cameron thing, which he wasn't involved in, but Terminator Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you come back in time and rescue Sarah as a child? I don't know. I don't have access to that information. We'll tell you in another film we won't make. I'll be interested in this. Could be an amazing spectacle, really. It will definitely be that.
Yeah, well, the second one was basically, it's Avatar, but instead of trees, this time it's water. So this one looks like it'll be, instead of water, this time it's fire.
Yes, which is not helping the comparisons to the other Avatar.
Indeed, yes.
Oh well. Next up we have Lee Isaac Chung's next movie, on the heels of Twisters, which grossed over $370 million worldwide last summer. Oscar nominee Lee Isaac Chung has closed a deal with Skydance to direct The Traveller, feature adaptation of the novel Traveller by Joseph Eckert. While the project is in the early stages and the logline has been kept under wraps, sources describe The Traveller as an intimate family drama that exponentially develops into a vast science fiction odyssey. The novel explores the life of Scott Treader, a 47-year-old biology technician who begins experiencing involuntary jumps through time, and there's been interest in mounting a feature adaptation for some time. An early version of the script, penned by Austin Everett, garnered significant industry attention a few years ago, making the Bloodlist, Hitlist, and the Blacklist, whatever those are, with MGM looking to develop it in 2019. So that's what he's going to do next. I like him as a director, and I'll be interested to see what this turns into. I'm always up for a time travel story.
Yeah, because it's such a well-worn concept. It's always interesting to see what people's takes on it are and if they can do anything new and interesting with it.
Yeah, there's not much else to say. He's going to direct it. He will cast someone 47 years old. I wonder who that end up being. An actor in their 40s.
Is that legal?
Well, it is for men.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Men get to age beyond 40, whereas women don't. I guess it'll take them off the standard list they always go to. You can't get your Chris Hemsworths or whoever, unless you want him to pretend he's playing over 40, which he might well be by that time. We'll find out before long. Next up, we have Sam Raimi's next project, which is well in development now. Rachel McAdams was cast before, and now we have Dylan O'Brien in talks to appear in it. It's called Send Help. It's a survival horror thriller about two colleagues who become stranded on a deserted island, the only survivors of a plane crash. On the island, they must overcome past grievances and work together to survive, but ultimately it's a battle of wills and wits to make it out alive. So it sounds like a fairly generic description of a premise, but I'm interested by the idea of it being a two-hander. You spend all this time with just two people, and it's a Sam Raimi thing, so there'll probably be some extra nonsense that will rear its ugly head.
I certainly hope so.
Has he ever made something that was straight, as in it's just people stuck somewhere? I don't know.
Was it him who directed A Simple Plan?
I don't know.
Yes, it was. It's basically a crime thriller.
Well, it's not just superheroes, monsters, or both that he does.
It does what I'm sure some people would see as proper films.
Grown-up films, or other such offensive stuff that these people say. Because our tastes are far too lowbrow for theirs. It's okay for a bit of fun, but you don't take it seriously, do you? You're not supposed to enjoy it. You're supposed to show up and laugh at it.
It's to show just how intelligent and sophisticated you are.
Yes, of course.
You don't muck about with this genre trash. That's for kids.
I am kind of a fan of these single set movies, as in where someone is stuck in a very confined location. And then the idea of it being a two-hander is appealing as well, because it allows the two actors to really own the film.
Yeah, because having something of that intimate intensity, it's going to be the actors themselves that need to keep you engaged.
And possibly the monsters.
If we're lucky.
Yeah, excited. I like Dylan O'Brien. I like Rachel McAdams. Put them together. Hopefully you get something good.
Makes sense to me.
I'm also seeing an article here that I'm just not going to read, but the headline's hilarious. Josh Gad says he was denied a role in Avatar because he looks like a tall, overweight Smurf as a Na'vi.
Okay.
I mean, it's not as if the CGI artists are in control of such things, but never mind.
Yeah, it's not as if a motion capture character can look like literally anything.
Yeah. All right, next up is Tom Holland going to be starring in a proper film, as you described it. He's going to star in John Grisham's legal thriller, The Partner, for Universal. It's unclear when the project will happen, because Tom Holland's pretty busy at the moment. He's got Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey coming up, which he may be the lead in, as rumour has it. He'll have Spider-Man 4, a million Avengers movies, and so on and so on. And he also has his non-alcoholic beer to promote.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Which sounds fun. The film is based on The Partner. It's a legal thriller novel by John Grisham, as it said. It was his 8th novel. 4 years since Patrick Lanigan, a junior partner in a law firm based in Biloxi, Mississippi, learned of the scheme, whatever that is, masterminded by his favourite client, shipbuilding magnate Benny Arcia, to defraud the US government via inflated and falsified contracts for the construction of US Navy vessels. There's all something here, but even reading this summary bores me to tears. It is possible for a skilled writer and director to turn a legal drama into something that I'm going to find really engaging.
Yeah, well, that's not just a John Grisham story, then. I'm guessing it's basically going to be greed, corruption, murder, and the legal profession.
Yes, and there are ways to make that engaging. We're going to have the same problem with Tom Holland playing a lawyer. It'll be, are you old enough to do this? He still looks young, and there's no getting away from that. But whenever he plays adult characters, I can't believe him. I find it very difficult.
Look at him, you're a child. Stop pretending to be an adult.
I always use the example of Uncharted where he's working in a bar that's, are you old enough to be in here? Poor Tom Holland. I feel like he'll never reach adulthood. He'll skyrocket straight to just being old. He'll turn 40 and he'll just suddenly look like an old man.
I can see that happening, actually.
All right, our final thing that we're going to discuss today is an update on Scream 7, the film that it's really difficult to decide whether you morally should watch it because of everything that happened prior to this point. But Joel McHale has been cast as Sidney Prescott's husband. He's been mentioned, but never seen in, well, one film, I guess. So that's it, Joel McHale. He's going to be in a cast featuring Courtney Cox and Mason Gooding, who respectively play legacy characters Gail Weathers and Chad Meeks Martin, as well as newcomers Isabel May, Celeste O'Connor, Asa German, McKenna Grace, Sam Breckner, and Anna Camp. No sign of Jenna Ortega or Melissa Barrera this film for reasons that you could look up. I'm not going to go into them.
Yes, it would take too long and would make both of us even more annoyed.
Yes. Joel McHale, he's probably going to be Ghostface, isn't he?
I would hope not, because it's too obvious.
Also, Sidney Prescott married him.
Right.
And he decides years later to try and kill her.
If that happened, I think that made the point I'm actually done with the franchise. That would just be massively disappointing. There also seems to be a lot of people are annoyed about this, basically because he's not Patrick Dempsey, who was a police officer in Scream 3.
So they thought he was going to be him.
Yeah, because when in the last movie there was a mention of Sidney's husband, he was kind of assumed that was who it was.
Was he her boyfriend in the third film? I don't remember that well.
He wasn't a boyfriend, but in the film it was implied that they were kind of getting closer. And when it looked like that Scream 3 was actually going to be the ending of the franchise, which seems ridiculous now, a lot of fans basically imagined them ultimately ending up together.
Right, okay. Well, they'll be disappointed then. But I like Joel McHale, so it'll be fun to see him. He'll probably be quite a goofy character because he usually is.
Yes, that's also a second slasher movie that he's been a part of after being in It's a Wonderful Knife.
Oh yeah, I didn't like that very much.
I expected more of it.
You shouldn't. I think it's the operative lesson to learn from things like this.
Yeah, but do you remember when it was first announced? We actually discussed it on News Roundup. I remember thinking that basically it was a slasher movie that was written by the guy who wrote Freaky and directed by the guy who did Tragedy Girls. So I was expecting it to be really, really good, to turn out to be decidedly mediocre.
Oh well, we'll see what happens with this. Even though I'm annoyed about the whole treatment of certain people in regards to this movie, I'll probably still go see it anyway. I have no principles, I just watch stuff.
But I think it's going to be something that's going to forever taint the franchise for as long as it continues to last.
Yeah, which may just be this film.
It is entirely possible.
Until 20 years pass again and they decide Scream 8 is time.
It also seems like they have decided that the ending of Scream 6 was a natural stopping point for the stories of Sam and Tara, even though it quite clearly wasn't, and that wasn't the intention.
Yeah.
But now they're just going to pretend that it was.
Yeah, of course.
To try and cover themselves.
The whole Neve Campbell being in this one is a weird one as well, because she rebelled against the last one for being offered an insulting payday for it, and now she's back because they've offered her a not insulting payday, it would seem.
That would be the implication, certainly, yeah.
So yeah, we'll see how this shapes out. A trailer will be forthcoming at some point. So there we go. That's our list. We've talked through everything that we needed to talk through, and we need to transition to the next person to bring us home. So as the first news anchor guest person, how would you like to transition to the next person?
I should have thought ahead about this.
I should warn people that they will have to think about this.
As was mentioned earlier, there are playthroughs of Last of Us available, so I'm going to continue watching one, and you can continue talking about video games with our next guest.
So I can boot up the console.
Sounds like it'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, go enjoy watching your Let's Play, and I will boot up for some gaming. Thank you for joining for this and discussing all of this content that we're not going to watch.
Until next time.
Okay, I've booted up this console and Issa has appeared as planned. Hello.
Hello.
Long time no appearance.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry.
I haven't taken this console out of the cupboard in a while, so it's a little bit dusty and that's why it's taken so long. Just see what's on the memory card.
What consoles are you still using?
Well, the classic PlayStation. Pretty much anything before the PS3 will have a memory card.
Yeah.
Or even the Xbox 360 didn't it? You had like memory units that you could buy.
Oh, it's been so long since I sold my Xbox 360, I don't remember.
I never had one. I've been a PlayStation loyalist ever since the PS1.
Fair enough.
PlayStation and Nintendo, that's all I ever seem to get these days. It's because I wanted to play The Last of Us and Uncharted and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. I only got the Xbox 360 because I was in uni and poor and I found it for like 80 quid in a second-hand shop or something. That's the only reason I had it.
And then it red ringed the day after you bought it, probably.
No, it actually chugged along for years and years until I finally bought a PS4 and let it lay to rest.
Oh, wow. A friend of mine bought a second-hand 360 and then it red ringed, I think it was 3 days after he bought it or something.
Oh.
Although Microsoft ended up giving him a new console for free somehow, so better for him. That was a weird time.
I don't know if they give you a free one if you buy yours at Cash Converters.
I don't know. I don't know how it happened. I don't even speak to the person anymore, so I can't ask him. Anyway, since you haven't been here in a while, why don't you tell people what you've been watching of late? Not since you were last here, but like just lately, what have you been watching?
Every single thing. Okay, I have a massive list.
Every single thing for the last over a year.
Yeah. I know you're not going to want to talk to me about this, but God, I love The Traitors, and I just finished the finale today. That was my current obsession until literally today.
Oh, you mean it's finished?
Yeah, you're free. You're free now.
Oh, so I never have to hear about it ever again. Fantastic.
Until next year.
Until next year. But I have a good 12 months grace before I have to hear people persistently talking about it.
So that's my trash baby love.
Seems to be the nerd equivalent of being not into football, is being around people that are into the shows.
The thing is, though, is The Traitors is pretty nerdy. It's social deduction games and stuff, so there's a really nerdy contingent of fans, and then there's people who are into other reality TV shows, and that is my exact intersection.
Okay.
I love trashy reality TV, and I love nerdy shit and game mechanics and stuff, so I'm just like, oh, this show was made for me.
So you're right in the centre of that Venn diagram.
Yeah. The centre is literally just me.
Well, fair enough. So that's been enjoyable, has it?
Yeah. I don't know if you want me to give spoilers on the podcast. I was not happy with who won the season, but it was a very enjoyable season. My favourite got robbed, that's all I'll say. That's my trashy thing I've been really into. I'll give you an actual quality thing. A show called Pachinko on Apple TV, I'm like in love with. It's a sort of historical drama that takes place over multiple different time periods, basically following the life of one woman. She was born in Korea where it was occupied by Japan, and then she moves to Japan when she gets married. So it sort of follows her life across different time periods, jumping back and forth literally between she's a child, and then you have another scene where she's an old woman with her grandson in the 80s. And it's just fantastic and heart-wrenching and beautiful, visually beautiful, music's beautiful, the direction, storytelling is fantastic. And the way they also, because a lot of the characters are Koreans who live in Japan, so they speak both Korean and Japanese, and there's some characters who speak English as well. So they handle having like 3 different languages present in the show really, really well. Cool. I love it. It's great.
Add it to the long list of Apple TV stuff that's great, but no one will ever watch for some reason.
I started watching it when I had a free trial of Apple TV, and the free trial ran out before I could finish it, and I'm gutted because I'm like, oh, do I have to pay? I will pay for Apple TV so I can finish watching it. It's that good. Or maybe I'll just try and get another free trial.
Are they still the cheapest streaming service?
I don't know, actually. I got a new phone and it came with a free trial that I didn't activate for ages, so I didn't activate it until autumn last year or something. So I've never actually known how much it costs, because anytime I want to watch something, I just find a way to get a free trial and then watch that thing and then cancel it.
I had a lot of free months of Apple because I got, might have been 6 months for just owning a PlayStation.
Huh.
There was that offer. Okay. So I took advantage of that. And then there was another offer because I have a Samsung TV, and that was another 3 months.
They really want people to... Anyway, plus they're like, please get Apple TV, I beg you. Here's 3 months for free.
But I'm on their screener platform, so if I want to see something that isn't out yet, I'll just ask, and then they'll put it on.
Yeah.
And they have never once asked me for my views on anything, which is good because I've never... No, I have done. I did 2 reviews for them, but that was it. I reviewed Tetris, and I reviewed... What was the other one? Luck, the animated movie. None of the TV stuff. And then when I've asked for a TV show, if it has multiple seasons, I'll automatically get the next season, so I don't need to worry about it.
There's some good shows on there. I really enjoy Mythic Quest, and I've been meaning to watch Severance, which I've heard really, really good things about. And there's some other stuff that looks really interesting. There's too many streaming platforms. There's way too many.
I only actually have one at the moment. I have Paramount Plus because they had a deal on that got you a year for like £35 or something like that. So I signed up for that, but I don't have any of the other ones. Well, I will have Disney Plus until March, but they've brought in the whole banning account sharing thing.
Oh, really? I just use my brother's, so we might get hit with that.
You'll get hit by that eventually, yeah.
My boyfriend also uses my brother's Disney Plus account.
Yeah, so it'll be like America, UK, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I should warn them.
Their service is too expensive for just one person, so screw them.
Yeah.
I'm not getting it back. Netflix did the same thing, don't have them. I have Prime as well, but that's only because I order a lot of stuff from Amazon and it just comes with it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of roped into needing Amazon Prime for work, and I feel really icky about it constantly. You're on a film set and you're just like, we have to have this by tomorrow. There's no choice. We must use Amazon Prime. Kind of hate it.
Plus, I've become really entitled, and if I have to wait more than a day to get something, I get really annoyed.
That's what they want.
Yeah, I'm old enough to still remember when things took 3 to 6 weeks for delivery.
Yeah.
We need to go back to that. We need to live a slower pace of life again and just not have everything at our fingertips at all times. That's enough of ranting about streaming services. Anything else that you've been watching that is worth noting?
You mentioned listening to by accident. I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks at work lately, long hours and stuff. And I listened to, which I know we're going to talk about later, a casting for the Odyssey. I love Greek mythology. I used to read those stories all the time when I was a kid. And I remembered that there was a translation of the Odyssey by a woman called Emily Wilson, who's a classicist. And she's the first woman to translate it into English. And seeing the announcement about the film kind of triggered that memory, and I was like, oh, I should finally listen to that. So Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey, I finished the audiobook the other day, and it's really, really good. Really interesting. And I'm kind of wondering what translation they're going to use for the film. I'm very curious about how they're going to handle the film in general. Cautiously interested. But yeah, it's a very interesting translation because she directly addresses a lot of things that were added in by male translators that were based on contemporary opinions on things like gender and sex and romance and cheating on your husband and all that kind of stuff. And she actually takes it back to how that would have been presented by the Greeks in the original text, or as original of the text as we can actually get, obviously. And so it's interesting to see a lot of that stuff stripped away and see what's underneath it. There's some people who would be like, oh, she's injecting a feminist perspective into the Odyssey. It's like, actually, she's removing a sexist perspective from the Odyssey. And the Odyssey still has a lot of sexism in it, even with that being done, because ancient Greece was also a patriarchal society. But it's interesting to see what gets pulled out when you're doing that, as well as it just being a really, really good translation that tells the story really well.
Well, the people that will kick off about that sort of thing, they won't read books or listen to them.
Exactly.
There's going to be a lot of people that will be reading AI-generated summaries of the Odyssey story and pretending that they're experts over the next couple of years.
Oh,
that's coming.
Sickening. Did you see the thing about the film critic who had never heard of the Odyssey and was basically showing off that he had never heard of the Odyssey on Twitter? I feel like if you're a film critic or like a media critic, you should have at least heard of the Odyssey, right? I don't feel like that's too pretentious of me to say.
Just in passing.
You don't even have to have read it, but just know what it is.
I read it at uni and I remembered almost nothing about it. If you listen to last month's news podcast, you'll get to hear me struggle through trying to remember what it was about because it was so long. And then I was partially reading a Wikipedia article and I got things wrong and stuff. But at least I'm not pretending to be an expert like some people probably will be. Audiobooks, I tried listening to them while I was doing other things, so like you were doing at work or whatever, but I found that I just wasn't paying attention to them. If I'm listening to an audiobook, I feel like I need to be listening intently.
Yeah, but also a lot of your work is based around writing and working with audio and stuff.
Not my day job.
Oh, right. But yeah, for me, if I'm spending all day painting something or sanding 3D prints, you need some entertainment in the background.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Do you have anything to plug then that people might want to check out?
I guess just generally my social media stuff. I've got some ideas in the works for more YouTube videos and projects and stuff of my own, but with work I just don't have a lot of time for my own side projects. But I go by Evil Clever Dog everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, unfortunately, Blue Sky, YouTube, TikTok, if you're in the US, sorry.
No, it's back now.
Oh yeah, no, it's back now. It's just heavily censored. I'm a costume designer and prop designer and maker. I used to make a lot of YouTube videos showing my process of how I made certain things. I have some ideas for some stuff I would like to try and get back into that just when I have some time. I just got a 3D printer, so that's the next thing I'm going to become a 3D printer guy.
There'll be links to that in the show notes. Various links.
I just plugged myself so poorly. That was like the worst one I've ever done. Can you tell? I don't do this anymore.
Well, that's fair enough. Andrew, who was on earlier, talked about how he was in a creative slump, so he's not done anything, so there was no plugs whatsoever.
We're all just like, it's January, don't talk to me.
Yeah, pretty much. I do have an additional thing to plug, actually, since the last session. I had this interview organised, but I didn't think I would turn it around in time, and somehow I did. But I interviewed an actress called Milan Tesfaye. She was really nice, really interesting. She is in a trilogy of movies that are on Lifetime that are based on Mary J. Blige songs or named after Mary J. Blige songs. I don't know if they're actually directly based on the content of the songs themselves, but certainly the titles are. So there was Real Love, Strength of a Woman, and the latest one is Family Affair, which is on Lifetime today as we record, actually, Saturday the 25th of January. So she was talking about that and appearing in a Mermaids Come to the Surface show called Siren, and the one episode of Supergirl she was in. She was talking about all that stuff. So it's really cool. It's under half an hour, and she had a lot to say. She was really cool. So that's on the site, and you can listen to it on any podcast platform of your choice. The same place you're listening to this, you'll be able to listen to that. It would just before it in the feed.
Cool.
Let's get on to our remaining trailers then. Let's start with 0 Day. We have a second trailer for this after having the first trailer only last month, which is weird. This trailer has more in it, way more in it. It's a topical story about what if there was a massive cyber attack on the US/the world and we needed to deal with it. 0 Day references the day a fault is found in an IT system, and then they count the number of days it takes them to resolve it. But it's ex-president Robert De Niro gets called in to manage a situation that's rapidly escalating, and it looks like it's getting more and more insane as it goes on. So what were your thoughts on this trailer for this TV show on Netflix?
Oh, it was a show? I thought it was a movie.
Yeah, it looks like it should be a movie.
It looks like it should be a movie.
And after you watch the show, you might be thinking, it's probably could have been done in 2 hours.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm into political thrillers. This one I was kind of a bit like, sure, yeah, maybe not fully my thing. That's just my opinion, man. It looked fine.
Yeah, it does look fine.
It looked fine.
I'm wondering if De Niro will be an actual IT expert or whether he'll just be someone that gets a lot of nerdy concepts explained to them. Someone will say something very complicated, some kind of computer jargon that nobody watching it will understand, and he'll say, "Speak English," and then they'll explain it to him. It seems like they're going after him specifically, whoever's behind all this, because he wasn't a nice person. So old white guy who was once the president might not be the best person.
Yeah, I think a lot of it may hinge on how they handle that aspect of it, because obviously right now, I mean in general, usually throughout history, but especially right now, people are very much not sympathetic to old white guys who are or were presidents.
Yeah, you can tell this is fiction because it has a female president in it. That is never going to happen.
Yeah.
It looks a bit generic. There's a lot of, oh, look, something's blown up, or we have hours to solve this problem, or the world will end, all that stuff. But there might be something interesting in there.
It sort of seems taking a lot from stuff like 24 and those kind of classic things.
For sure, yeah. I think we are still awaiting the landmark cyber attack story in any media that we might want to consume. I feel like we haven't had it yet, but I think we'll get there because it'll be on everybody's mind. I mean, towards the end of last year, we had that weird CloudStrike outage that crippled half the world just because someone rolled out a dodgy update and then planes couldn't take off and all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I got most of a day off work, so I was quite happy.
Oh, really? It barely affected me. I was like, oh, what? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I couldn't get logged in at work and I got to just chill. I have physical media. I'll be fine. If the internet goes down, I'm okay because I can put discs in still.
Shout out to physical media.
Whereas some people would just be utterly lost because everything they watch needs an internet connection. So, yeah, this show is supposed to instill fear in those people. Oh, maybe I should cut the cord.
Yeah.
And say nothing about all the data you're giving away just by being logged into various things. Maybe there'll be some of that in there too.
Don't remind me. The pub I was at last night, you had to walk downstairs to get to it, so it was underground. And so that meant it had no 4G connection or data connection or whatever. And I got down there and I was like, oh, what do you mean I can't message people? And then in order to get on the pub's Wi-Fi, they were like, can you give us your full name, date of birth, email address, all this stuff? And I was like, no. So I just suffered through not being able to message my boyfriend back while I was at this bar last night because I was like, I don't want to give this pub all my information information just to be able to get on the Wi-Fi, actually. I'm never going to come here again.
A few hours of being disconnected won't do anybody any harm.
Yeah, it was all right. It was fine. I had to talk to my friends.
You had to talk to someone. Perish the thought. I have a burner email that isn't connected to my name that I use for stuff like that.
Oh, that's quite clever, actually.
And then the information that they want, I just enter nonsense. I just enter whatever.
Oh, I should do that. Because so many restaurants and stuff are like, oh, connect to our Wi-Fi by giving us your mother's maiden name and your social security number. No thanks.
I think it's called public.wifi 10,000 or something at hotmail.com. Basically, I named it to be obvious that I'm exploiting their data collection needs. I feel like I win by doing that. I'm probably still giving them too much information.
Well, you've said it now. They're obviously listening to the podcast.
Obviously, all of them. They're all going to change their policy. It's going to be... We'll need ID. We need a photo of your passport or something to let you on the Wi-Fi.
Like a thumbprint.
Yeah, it's going to get worse. So, do you think you'll watch this then? Or do you think it'll be another one of those Netflix things that just goes nowhere? No one sees it?
Me watching it doesn't really have much of a bearing on that. I probably won't. It's not the type of stuff I'm super into. And I've got enough things I need to catch up on already. Probably not for me.
I'm not going to watch it. I don't have Netflix. So, actually getting a hold of it would take some effort on my part, and I'm not even bothered about putting that work in to get hold of it. So
yeah.
That tells you everything. But I think it looks mildly interesting. And De Niro has a high miss rate at the moment. I think just as he's getting older, he just says yes to everything.
Yeah.
And then he's just in stuff and they may not be that good. The Michael Caine approach.
Yeah, it did seem a bit like, oh, we got a big name, let's just dangle him. And it's not a particularly challenging role for him or a unique role for him or anything.
No, not at all. All right, let's move on to Drop, which is from the director of Happy Death Day. A single mother, you have to assume, because she's going on a date. Goes on a date with someone from a dating app and then ends up in a thriller situation where she has to kill people or something for some reason. I like the look of this. I think it seems like another film about the hell that is dating, especially beyond a certain age. There's a lot of those, and I quite appreciate the coverage of that sort of thing. It's just, this is awful. Dating apps are awful. And I feel like the trailer plays with that a little bit. It makes the guy seem a little bit sus when he first appears, but then it just seems like he's a bit nervous because he's not the one that's going to put her up to killing him or whatever. I like Happy Death Day, so the fact that it's Christopher Landon doing this interests me. I think he does good work. I loved Happy Death Day, so I'm up for this. What are your thoughts?
So I haven't seen Happy Death Day, but I was pretty intrigued by the trailer. I kind of enjoy things like horror and thrillers when there's another aspect to them. So for example, I like Jordan Peele's horror movies because they're exploring some other lens other than just, oh, people are dying and being chased and stuff like that. And this seems to be commenting upon a recent, as well as just dating apps suck, the recent trend of women sharing more about their experiences with dating and the ways in which they feel uncomfortable or even in danger, but obviously taken to an extremely heightened level. Yeah, there's something potentially interesting in that.
Yeah, with horror, I'm always more interested in what the film is actually about, why it's about what it's about, and what it's actually getting at, because you can get some really interesting commentary on various things just by putting it through a horror lens. A lot of the best horror movies do that, and then you get a bunch of generic ones that just don't understand that, no, your film needs to be about more than its surface level traits.
Yeah.
And it seems like this will have a bit of that. I do hope that most of it's in the restaurant. The trailer doesn't seem like it will be. It seems like it'll escalate to the point where there's multiple locations and lots of running around and whatever. But I love a single location thriller. I'm enamored by them.
Yeah, the bottle episode thriller situation I think is quite interesting.
Yeah, if someone's just stuck in a place and can't leave it and has to solve a problem, I'm usually interested.
Yeah. And usually when you see films that are all set in one location, you're like, so it's based on a play. And this is obviously not the case. So I think it's interesting when a film that started as a film decides to all be set mostly in one location.
Yeah, because it forces the director to work with certain limitations, doesn't it? I only have this one place to play with, so I need to build it out to real and lived in, and I need to use all that space and all that. Yeah, I do enjoy those. I can't leave this place and I have a problem to solve. Lock with Tom Hardy is a film that I go back to quite a lot because he just spends the whole time on the phone in a car and it's still really gripping.
Yeah, yeah.
Or Ryan Reynolds' best film, Buried, where he's buried alive in a box and makes phone calls.
Oh, I couldn't watch that. No thanks.
It's his best film, at least in terms of as an actor, I think. It challenges him in ways that most of his film roles really don't.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds knows his wheelhouse and he sticks to it now, which is fair enough for him, I suppose. So Happy Death Day is up there with my favourite horror movies. And the sequel's very good as well, so check them out. Freaky I still haven't seen, which was the same director. That one is Catherine Newton swaps bodies with Vince Vaughn, who's a serial killer.
Vince Vaughn is a serial killer, okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but apparently it's very good.
Okay.
I will check it out at some point. In the trailer, the vibrating sound of the phone was really unnerving. I think it's probably just for the trailer. But I hope they manage to do something similar in the film itself, where every time you hear the vibrating, you're on edge. I think that would work really well as a tension device.
Yeah, that could be quite effective.
We'll see how that pans out then. Next one is Hell of a Summer, which is, I think, falling a bit more into the camp of generic slasher movie territory, unfortunately. Although there might be something about people that refuse to grow up, or whether we should be forced to grow up, whether we should judge people for what they like to do with their lives, whether they're harming people, whether they're harming themselves, I don't know. Because the lead guy is definitely a case of arrested development. He's a grown man that still works in a summer camp, which is typically a student job, isn't it? It's jobs that students do, or people working their way through college or whatever. It's not I'm 40 and still doing this type job generally.
Yeah, and I did think there were some quite funny lines in the trailer, like, you're 45 years old and you're still in a summer camp. I'm 24! That was quite funny. But yeah, what was presented of a general slasher, I was kind of like, but there were some funny one-off lines and stuff in it that had me giggling.
Yeah, it seems very tongue-in-cheek, which is good. I think that might be in its favour. And if it does have something to say about don't judge how people want to live their lives, especially if they're not harming anyone. I think the whole life choices thing is coming up more and more in films, because there are the social norms of, by a certain age, you're supposed to be this, this, and this. You're supposed to have this, this, and this.
Yeah, which nobody can fulfill.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's all based on boomer logic of, by the time I was 25, I was married with you and had a house and all this stuff.
Yeah. Okay, how much did you pay for that house?
You walked into a bank smartly dressed and you got 110% mortgage. Congratulations. For a £70,000 house.
Yeah. Oh my god, it's actually sickening.
Boomer logic.
Yeah.
And I feel like films and TV should have more of a reckoning with that. There should be more of the, no, your generation ruined our chances of having a comfortable life, and we need to explore that in some way. I don't know how we explore it, but someone more clever than me could figure it out.
I do think that particular topic, there's a lot of fruit there for exploration in films and novels and stuff. And I feel like we've started to see an element of that, but I think that might end up being something that becomes another trend in stories, especially as more millennials and Gen Z get to make big budget things and be in charge of them as opposed to just working underneath other people.
Yeah, well, are the TikTok generation going to want to make something that's longer than 60 seconds? There's a question.
Ah, that's easy, low-hanging fruit.
Well, talking about Netflix, they actually have instructions that are given to screenwriters and stuff.
Yeah, I was watching something about this yesterday.
You need to have characters explain what they're doing because someone might not actually be watching.
Yeah. On the one hand, I'm like, yeah, I understand why you're doing this. On the other hand, I'm like, I don't want to watch something that someone assumes I don't want to watch.
Stop punishing me for paying attention.
Yeah, and to be fair, as I stated earlier, I am someone who needs some media to have on in the background while I'm doing other things. I choose that media specifically for that purpose. It's things like shows I've already seen before and YouTube video essays where the visual component isn't the most important component and stuff like that. But yeah, I've noticed this in particular with me and my partner. We very much enjoy the current Lindsay Lohan cinematic universe of trashy holiday movies.
Yes.
Yeah, when we watch those, I do sit there wondering, did they make this just assuming that everyone was on their phones in the background? Because people are just so like, oh yes, I did this. And then in another scene, it's like, she did this. And it's like, yeah, I know, I saw it.
Her last one, I turned it off because I was so bored. I'm heavy into the Netflix Christmas movies.
The last one was probably the weakest one.
I did watch all of the one where she falls down a hill or something and loses her memory.
That was great. I loved that one. And the weird Irish Wish one that was released on St. Patrick's Day. I wouldn't tell any of my Irish friends to watch it, but it was pretty fun.
That was the one with Captain Picard's son in it.
Oh, yeah.
Ed Spilliers, he was in that one. But yeah, bad Netflix. Maybe we are going to have a generation of filmmakers that will just never make a film that lasts longer than like an hour or something.
I mean, it sounds like, from the way that that's been described, every source I've seen, it sounds like that's being implemented by Netflix executives and it's not something that the filmmakers want to actually do. So my hope would be that if there's enough pushback, they'll stop doing it. Or it will be that's a particular type of movie that gets made and people still get to make other things that aren't geared towards assuming everybody's on their phone the whole time through it.
But they need to label those a second screener, label it that, so I know not to watch it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Mickey 17. This is one I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, me too.
It's an adaptation of the novel, which is called Mickey 7. Apparently the 17 was just so they could kill him more times in the film.
I saw that and I was like, fantastic.
That's a good use of adaptation, isn't it?
Yeah.
We want to kill Robert Pattinson more than 7 times, so let's make it 17. I imagine there's going to be a death montage that will show him dying 6 or 7 times, and then we'll get a more involved story as we go on. It looks amazing. Visually, it looks amazing, and Robert Pattinson will probably be very good at something like this. The comparisons to Moon aren't lost on me, which is a similar idea. In Moon, you have Sam Rockwell, who's an expendable person who works on the moon, and because there's lethal radiation there for some reason, he's expected to die and then be replaced by a clone, but something goes wrong and there's 2 of them, and the film happens. So it's a similar idea.
Oh, okay. I wonder if Moon was based on the book and now there's an adaptation of the book. I don't know. I haven't read the book, so I don't know when it came out.
Or it could be one of those happy accidents where someone came up with a similar idea at the same time.
Yeah.
Which does happen.
I can see where the idea comes from. That does very much feel like a commentary upon things like overworked Amazon warehouse workers and things like that who are just treated as utterly expendable, and it's okay to just overwork them and make them do really dangerous things. Obviously exaggerated again.
Because we have a long line of people that want to do this, so that's fine if we burn this person out.
Yeah, because people need jobs. So I can definitely see the commentary upon the current state of our awful capitalist hellscape within this movie. But it also looks like it's taking it with a sort of twisted sense of humour. I'm very excited about this movie. Since the first trailer that came out a while ago, last year I think, I was instantly intrigued.
Yeah, well, the appeal of the pinch of salt or whatever that they're taking the concept with is you'll force people to think about it without them thinking that they're being preached to, because rightly or wrongly you get a lot of pushback on things where the whole typical woke agenda criticism that you get. But I think in a lot of cases you might watch the thing and you feel like it is being very heavy-handed with its message, and sometimes it stops telling its story in order to deliver its message rather than making the message part of the story.
Yeah.
And generally when you make the message part of the story, people don't notice it, and they end up thinking about it anyway, because the film presents it in such a way. I'm trying to think of a relevant example, of a recent example anyway, of something that doesn't stop what it's doing to explain what it's about, but I'm struggling. But there will be ones out there.
One example that comes to mind, it's because a friend of mine wrote an essay for it when we were on our masters, was Oksha, which was a good Netflix movie. And she was interested in talking about how films discuss topics like veganism and environmentalism and stuff, and how Oksha, you know, it's a very sad movie. I cried watching it.
I've seen it, yeah.
But it doesn't pause to beat you over the head with the idea. It just lets you feel the emotions and lets you make the connections of how the farm that all the animals are in at the end feels like a almost Auschwitz-esque kind of location. And it just lets you make that emotional connection without stopping to be like, look, it's just like Auschwitz.
Yeah, so it looks like Mickey 17 will do that. I feel like it'll just show you what's wrong with this setup by telling a story that shows you what's wrong with the setup, which is great. And there'll be some stuff about identity as well. Maybe the fact that people are feeling a bit lost in the digital age. The idea that if everyone's being reduced to algorithms and patterns and how you can be advertised to.
And if you're replaceable.
Yeah, because people will start feeling like, am I just data to these people? And the answer is yes, you are. That's all you are. As a customer, you're just data to this person.
And money.
Yeah, and as an employee, you're just a slave to their whatever they want you to do. You don't have any agency in your life in that respect. Sci-fi is great at that, giving you an extreme example of something that's going on now. I mean, that's why Star Trek became popular, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I really hope this movie's as amazing as the trailer makes it look, and I really hope it's a hit. Given that the director has gotten quite a lot of accolades for Parasite, I think it's set up to do very well, and I hope it does.
It's a bit of a surprising project for him to take on when you consider what he made before. Just a big, visually splendorous sci-fi thing.
Yeah, I like a director who's got variety to them.
Yeah, a bit of range. Mark Ruffalo looks like he's having fun, but I think he always has fun, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
He's having fun just being a evil... Well, not even an evil, just a...
really horrible man. A horrible, horrible man.
Just a manager.
Yeah.
His version of a manager, so that'll be great. And Mickey seems to be fine with being put down as an expendable, or maybe he's too dumb to understand what he's actually doing. There's a bit of a sense that he's a little bit deficient in intelligence.
Oh my god, you know what's something so funny? I just googled the director because when you said it's odd for him to do sci-fi, in my head I was like, I think he made Snowpiercer though. That's a sci-fi movie. And I'm right, he did make Snowpiercer. He also made Oksha. So it's very funny that I brought that up as a comparison.
I forgot about Snowpiercer, actually.
Really good movie.
For some reason in my head, it's only a TV show, even though I've seen the movie.
They also made the TV show. I didn't see it, but apparently it wasn't very good. I think it got cancelled after one season or something.
Chris from this podcast, he watched, I think there was 2 seasons of it. He liked season 1, but not season 2.
Oh, there was a season 2? Wow.
I think so.
Okay.
But I think the first season was maybe just the film/book stretched out a bit longer.
Okay. But yeah, he made Okja and Snowpiercer. So yeah, I don't think this is super off the cuff for him anyway.
Yeah, it's not outside his wheelhouse at all. I'm talking nonsense. I was just thinking about Parasite in my head, and it's like, it's weird to go from Parasite to this.
If anything, I think Parasite is the one that's like, ooh, variety and something different.
Directors don't always like to make the same thing.
Although also not really, because all his movies are full of so much social commentary.
Yeah, Snowpiercer's about exploitation of small children and all this stuff.
Yeah, and the underclass, which it looks like this will be as well.
Yeah, and how society literally eats itself from the top down.
Man, what a good movie. Watch Snowpiercer again, y'all. It's a good movie.
I've only seen it the once, but it was one of those, well, I already knew Chris Evans was very good, but it made a lot of people look up and say, oh, look, Chris Evans is actually good even when he's not Captain America. But I was thinking, yeah, I've seen Sunshine.
Yeah, Sunshine. He's really good in that. I love that movie as well.
He did a lot of Drek, like some stupid superhero movie where he was telekinetic or something. That was really bad.
He was in another superhero movie?
Yeah, it was called Push, I think. He was telekinetic.
Oh, was that from that? There was a sort of 2010s bout of non-Marvel and DC superhero movies, adaptation of other comics and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was one of those. He did The Losers as well, which was essentially DC's The A-Team. That was all right. But it's not a superhero movie. It's a comic book movie.
Okay.
All right, moving on to Until Dawn. All the talk about video games earlier, we're finally bringing that in. So it's a film adaptation of the video game that is in itself trying to emulate the experience of watching a film, but being able to choose the film. It's a very weird circle back to whatever. My thought is, I'm not sure what the point of this, because the game was basically a send-up of horror movies, except you're in control of the tropes to some degree. So why would you just make a generic horror movie out of something that was supposed to be?
It's also barely based on the game. I've played it. Okay, so I'll say, I know a lot of people love Until Dawn. I really don't like Until Dawn. I remember watching an interview with the game director or something where he was like, yeah, so we're taking those common tropes of horror movies, but we're putting a twist on them. Our story is so unique. And I was like, no, it's not. It's literally one for one. You can guess what's going to probably happen because it happens in every slasher movie or horror movie, and I just didn't think it was very good. But they also haven't even adapted that story, which I think can work for a video game adaptation. Like Fallout, I think, is a really good example of a game where it made complete sense when they made a movie to not just make Fallout 3 as a TV show, but to make an original story set in the world. I don't think Until Dawn is the story where you do that, though, because it's not a role-playing game with a vast world and many multiple options and characters and unexplored aspects to it. It's one very succinct game with some options within it. It's kind of an odd choice.
Yeah, different people can survive every playthrough and you can choose what kills you and stuff.
Yeah.
I thought it was a video game version of Cabin in the Woods, actually, when I first played it, because it's a similar idea of here's how a horror film is constructed and we're going to manipulate that.
No, not as creative as Cabin in the Woods.
No, definitely not. And it got remastered for some reason, because every video game has to get remastered now, because that's easier than making new ones, apparently.
Yeah, of course.
And the remastered one apparently looks worse than the original. Somehow.
Didn't play it, but yeah, maybe.
I've not played it. I'm not buying it again.
There's actually a few remasters that don't look as good as the original Final Fantasy X and X-2.
Yeah, gaming is now just remasters and remakes. That's all it is.
But we'll get into it because we're going to talk about Horizon later. One thing I will say is I do kind of like the idea of adapting a video game into a movie and then utilising the idea of when you die, you come back and can try again as an aspect to the movie that sort of evokes a game mechanic, but doing it with Until Dawn just feels kind of weird. It feels weird that it's not an adaptation of that actual story. Also, they cast a lot of famous actors in the game who are obviously a lot older now and probably couldn't be cast as those exact same characters, but it feels kind of weird that it's this relatively unknown cast and not people like Rami Malek, who was a standout part of that game. I'm just kind of wondering what went on with the making of this.
Yeah, because it just looks like it's a generic time loop horror movie, really. Talking about Happy Death Day, I actually think Happy Death Day, the horror elements are the least interesting part, but the film isn't really about that. It doesn't focus on that, so it's kind of okay. But yeah, and this, they've tried to replicate the gaminess with the time loop, but we already had Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise. That replicated that mechanic perfectly.
And Mickey 17.
Edge of Tomorrow did it perfectly. That was literally about I'm going to brute force this section until I get it right. It doesn't matter how long it takes.
Yeah.
Every gamer's felt that frustration of this time. I just have to do this.
That's what Hades is. If you made a movie adaptation of Hades, which I don't think should ever happen, but if you did, that should absolutely be a part of it. Feels kind of odd.
Yeah, I think the rights holders of everything are just going to try and plumb the depths of what video game IP they have access to and try and turn it into something.
Yeah, now that a few have been successful.
Yeah, because Sonic has been successful, The Last of Us has been successful, Fallout has been successful. I didn't like Fallout that much, but it was successful.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I think there's certain video games that work in adaptation and certain ones that I think maybe don't so much. We'll get to that when we talk about Horizon.
And then you have Borderlands, which proves that it's still possible to make an unwatchable video game movie.
Yeah, that is the only thing I've heard about it.
It's dreadful. I considered leaving when I went to see it at the cinema.
Wow. It's been a long time since I walked out of a movie before it was finished.
I don't do it.
I don't even remember what the last one was.
I was the only person in the screening, and this was less than a week after it came out.
Oh, oof.
And I was sitting there, and it was on, and I was like, this is horrible. And then I thought, will I go? What will I get out of staying for the next 25 minutes or however long was left? And then I started thinking, will I go on my phone because there's no one else here? But I didn't do either of those things.
Your second screening.
I know, but I was that bored. I didn't go on my phone and I didn't leave. I just sat and watched it until the end and thought, should have left. It was dreadful. Until Dawn, the movie, I don't know if the game has a big following that will drag people to the cinema to see it.
It sort of does. It's not the biggest video game ever. It has a bit of a cult fan base. I don't get the hype personally, but it does have quite a lot of fans. The funny thing is, though, is that all the other games that same company made seem to be even worse than Until Dawn. So people don't even like the other games. From what I've seen, they just like Until Dawn. And I played one of the other games called Man of Medan, and it was atrocious. Until Dawn, I was kind of going, I have criticisms of this, I'm gonna play it to the end, but I'm not really fully satisfied this fulfills what they said it was, blah, blah, blah. Man of Medan, I played with a friend to take the piss out of it. It was so bad.
Yeah, Until Dawn, you can finish it in about 5-6 hours, can't you? You can do it in one sitting.
Yeah, they're short games.
One review of it that I saw at the time talked about how it might be the ideal party game, as in you have people round and you're playing Until Dawn and then you choose amongst yourselves how you're going to get someone killed or what choice you're going to make when they come up.
I could see it if it was more enjoyable to replay.
Well, I only played it once, so I haven't seen all the other eventualities. I could watch some kind of breakdown on YouTube if I was interested. But yeah, the film, as you say, it doesn't even seem to be Until Dawn.
Yeah, this kind of feels like a movie with the title Until Dawn.
And you have that cheesy bit in the trailer where the guy says, to escape this, we need to survive until dawn.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, I don't think anyone in the game even says that, but I played it literally when it came out, which I think was 2017, and haven't played it since, so I could be misremembering.
Yeah, it wasn't that long after it came out I got it. I remember it was on a deal on Amazon or something for like £17 or whatever, so I was like, I might as well get this. And then probably 2 months later, it turned up on PSN for free, and I was like, I haven't even played this yet. That happens to me a lot. I might skip it when it comes out, who knows? Maybe it's a streaming thing.
Yeah, watch with your phone.
Maybe it would have been ideal to put something like that on streaming. They do a bit of a Bandersnatch thing where they let people choose things.
Oh, yeah. But then you might as well just play Until Dawn, because it already exists.
Well, I guess not everybody has a PlayStation or whatever console that it might be on.
That's true, yeah.
Whereas lots of people have a TV.
Speaking of time loop horror-esque games that are actually good, Oxenfree is very good, and it's right there, and it's super cheap, because it's an indie game, and it's brilliant. Second one's only okay, but the first one is really, really good.
We'll see how it goes down. If people enjoy it, people want to see it, fine. You could watch other horror movies that do it better, I would imagine. Anyway, let's move out of trailers. Let's talk about some mop-up news items that have come to light over the past few days. We have some more casting for this HBO Lanterns show, which is essentially Green Lantern by way of True Detective, as in it seems like it's going to be fully set on Earth and there'll be very little in the way of superpowers. But Sinestro's going to be in it, apparently. Ulrich Thompson is going to play him.
You can't not have Sinestro.
He's been tapped to recur in the HBO, WB-TV and DC Studios series Lanterns as Sinestro. The series follows new recruit Jon Stewart, played by Aaron Pierre, and Lantern legend Hal Jordan, played by Kyle Chandler, two intergalactic cops drawn into a dark Earth-based mystery as they investigate a murder in the American heartland. So it's basically True Detective, but with power rings.
Yeah. I wonder if it will be like, oh, an alien got murdered or something. So there's a sci-fi outer space element to it. Because otherwise, why are the Green Lanterns investigating it? Why not just the cops?
But it sounds like it'll be like 7 episodes of not an awful lot Green Lantern-y happening, and then the final episode they'll finally power up and fight.
Yeah, do you think it'll be one of those ones where you don't get the suit until the end? I hope not. I really like Jon Stewart. He's my favourite Green Lantern, so I was very excited to hear that he would be a focal point of this. So I hope it's good. I don't know a lot about it other than the guy who was cast as Jon Stewart and now this casting. I'm just kind of like, oh, I hope it's good.
Yeah, I'm just not sure this is the right move for a Green Lantern thing. My favourite thing about the Green Lantern concept is this sprawling space epic where...
I feel like it could have been DC's Guardians of the Galaxy kind of thing.
Yeah.
To follow the new Superman and all that. Having the Green Lantern movie be their Guardians that's more cosmic and maybe a bit more humour and stuff like that, I think could work.
Yeah, I think they're just scared of trying to do what the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie did in inviting comparison. But it was so long ago and no one really cares.
Yeah, no one remembers it. It's okay. We've all forgotten.
Just because Ryan Reynolds keeps bringing it up. But he talks about it as if it's his worst movie, but if you look at his filmography, he's done a lot of terrible films. It's almost like he's trying to divert you from the other bad stuff he's done by trying to make it seem like he's only done one bad thing and it was Green Lantern.
Yeah, it at least has that iconic moment where his girlfriend recognizes him and she's like, you think just because I can't see your cheekbones that I don't know it's you? That's pretty iconic.
My take on Green Lantern, the movie, is that it's not as bad as people say it is. It's pretty consistent with the quality of superhero movies that were being made around the time, I think. The MCU wasn't on its feet yet. That was the year Thor came out. So they were still making these half-baked, weird movies that they've somehow come around to be making again. The Sony ones are effectively back in that mold.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not worse than Madam Web, for example, and people act like it's the worst film ever made, and it's just not. You can look at any superhero movie made after Spider-Man before they started understanding how to make them, and they're all about the same. Daredevil and so on, Ghost Rider. It's comparable in quality to those ones.
Elektra.
Yeah, it's not worse than Elektra, is it? I've never seen Elektra, actually. I've never seen it all the way through.
Oh, really? I had to sit through that one.
Catwoman. It's not going to be worse than Catwoman, is it? I have seen Catwoman all the way through.
I've not seen that one.
But this TV show, if you like True Detective, that seems to be the vibe they're going for. I mean, if you want to make a DC True Detective-esque show, use The Question, not the Green Lanterns.
Oh, that would be so good, doing a murder mystery question show and it's street-level DC Comics crime stuff. That would be so good.
Or Martian Manhunter, because he's a detective sometimes.
Well, you can have him come in as a character to take it to the more heightened levels and then give Martian Manhunter his own movie or show because he's brilliant and I love him and please do it for me.
Yeah, I love Martian Manhunter as well. He was very prominent in Supergirl, so there's plenty of him there.
Yeah, I did enjoy that. I love him in the Justice League cartoon and JLU and stuff. I want that Martian Manhunter back.
So we'll see. I imagine that it'll be clear on what the style of the show will be when a trailer comes out. But if it is just people in trench coats and they're wearing the Green Lantern ring that they never use, then I'll be disappointed.
Trench coat over Green Lantern suit is kind of a look, though, you have to admit. With the mask and the ring and stuff. That'd be pretty sick.
We're already going to have a Green Lantern character in the DCU by then anyway.
Oh yeah, of course, because Guy Gardner is in Superman.
Nathan Fillion's going to be there doing that. Maybe they'll introduce the whole... I'm kind of hoping not, actually, because I don't want the Superman movie to be, and by the way, this person's backstory is this. I want it to be a Superman movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't want to be bogged down by these other characters.
I have high hopes for the Superman movie. I've got a good vibe about it. Got a good feeling.
Same. I wasn't enthusiastic about the trailer, though.
Oh, I loved it. I rewatched it for Crypto multiple times. I was like, oh, he's such a good dog. Look at him.
I talked about it last month, but I really hate that the first thing James Gunn shows us about his Superman is him injured.
Oh, see, I actually love that. I think it's a really baller move because we've had so much Superman lacking the human and empathy component. And so to have the first view of him to be him wounded, I think sends a very different message.
But it also seems to be the whole, don't worry, we can hurt him, so you can't complain about him being invulnerable like you always do. Internet.
Things can have multiple functions.
I wanted a display of, here's Superman, here he is, and I don't want to see him hurt as the first thing you ever show me.
Oh, we got plenty of cool Superman in the trailer, though.
I'm also salty about the fact that Superman and Lois got cancelled because apparently we can't understand that two versions of the same character exist at the same time. You cancelled a great show with a great version of Superman just because people might not understand that they're not the same person.
Even though we've had like a million Batman things on the go at the same time before. There's too much Batman, scale it back, more Superman.
Give me more Superman, or look at some of your other characters. They also exist.
Yeah.
Give us another Wonder Woman.
please recast Wonder Woman. I'm begging. I'm literally on my knees begging them to recast Wonder Woman.
They probably will. But as who, we don't know. All right, next up, Ocean's 14 is taking shape, and Fall Guy and Bullet Train filmmaker David Leitch is in talks to direct it. George Clooney's Smokehouse Banner is producing it, and it's expected that he will return along with Brad Pitt. So Ocean's 14 is going to be Ocean's 11, but again, and that's it, really.
What? I'm going to be honest, it's very hard to keep track of what's happening with the Ocean's franchise because of the naming conventions.
Well, they abandoned the Woman series.
Okay.
I thought Ocean's 8 was fine.
Yeah, it was alright.
I think it's the second best Ocean's movie.
Oh, wow. High praise.
Although I don't really like 12 and 13 that much.
I think just the original is so good.
12 is especially atrocious because you have a scene where Julia Roberts has to pretend that she's Julia Roberts.
I actually thought that was quite funny myself.
So she's a character that looks exactly like actress Julia Roberts because she's played by an actress
who also exists in this universe.
If you have to do that, as dumb as it is, could you not have just created an actress that she resembles for the film? Have her on magazine covers or something like that throughout? It would have been so easy to do that.
I thought it was funny. I do agree that the first one's the better one, though.
But they're coming back to do it. There's also the reboot that's supposed to have Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling in it that they're supposed to be doing. I don't know what's happening with that, but they're going back to this. A common feature on this news podcast that we do is nothing ever finishes. We keep saying that because nothing ever does. Every other month and they're bringing this thing back that you thought was over.
Yeah, we're in the era of the reboot, remake, reimagining. Please, just anything that will put bums on seats because it's got a pre-existing audience and we don't want to take a risk on anything.
Yeah, so Oceans is the next one because apparently no one's figured out that Danny Ocean likes to steal stuff and he keeps getting to do it.
I'm kind of like, okay, on this, it exists. I watched Fall Guy on a plane, which seemed to be the optimal way to watch it.
I liked The Fall Guy.
It was fine. It kept me entertained on a plane.
I don't think it was supposed to be any more than that, but yeah, Ryan Gosling was good in it, Emily Blunt was good in it, the stunt work was good in it.
Yeah, and given the fight choreo action components of that, I'm interested to see how that director handles an Ocean's movie. I haven't watched Bullet Train, but from what I've seen of the trailer, that also seems to be quite stylized action.
Oh yeah, Bullet Train's good fun. It's one of those, it's exactly what it is, and you'll enjoy it for that if you're willing to put up with it. David Leitch is one of those action directors that is very good at directing action, and that stands out because there's so many directors that are not very good at directing action. They don't understand how a sequence works, so transposing that to a heist sequence will probably work really well because it is all about how you build the storytelling of the scenes to understand how they're supposed to play out. So it is just preparation and skill, and I think he has that in spades. So I think he'll do a good job with it. I'm just not enamored with the prospect of it just being another Oceans movie. I feel like that concept's pretty played out.
Yeah, I feel like I would rather be like, oh, this director who's really good at action is making a heist action movie.
But no one's going to watch that, so it has to be an Oceans movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be great. I don't know. But I like David Leitch. I think I've enjoyed most of the films of his that I've seen. So maybe I'll enjoy this one. And it depends who else they get back. What number will they put on this one? I mean, it's called Ocean's 14, I guess, but it might be called something else. But yeah, I thought they were going to do the female Oceans movies and they would work up to 14. So the next one would have been 9 and then 10. The number convention would really confuse you, wouldn't it? If you didn't know the series.
Yeah.
I've watched Ocean's 8. I don't know where the other 7 are.
More or less confusing than the Fast and the Furious franchise. At least those are in order.
Yeah, they're all numerical, aren't they? All the Fast movies.
Yeah, but sometimes it'll be, oh, we have Fast and the Furious, and then Fast and the Furious 2, and then Fast 5.
They don't all have numbers.
F8, stuff like that.
Yeah, so it's The Fast and the Furious, then it's Too Fast, Too Furious, then Tokyo Drift.
Oh, that's it.
Which is supposed to be a spin-off, but ends up being important. And then the fourth one's just called Fast and the Furious.
Yeah.
Then Fast 5, and then I don't know what the sixth one's called.
After that, I think it's Fast and the Furious 6, Fast and the Furious 7, and then F8.
Fate of the Furious.
Yeah, the Fate of the Furious. Can we stick to one naming convention? But also, I kind of like it when it's Fast and the Furious because it is just such a bonkers franchise that I'm just like, you do what you want.
I'm looking forward to the Fast and Furious franchise being over. Although the soap opera drama surrounding it is mildly entertaining.
Yeah, I love it.
Vin Diesel and The Rock just bitching about each other in interviews. And then everybody slowly realising that Vin Diesel's not great to work with and just refusing to work with him. And then him refusing to work with other people, which means he spends the entire of the last Fast movie by himself because no one wants to work with him anymore.
I didn't know that, but that's very funny. I enjoy the aspect where it's, okay, all three of these actors have it in their contract that they can't lose a fight, so the fight has to end via earthquake.
I think think it was especially egregious in the spin-off one, whatever that was called, Hobbs and Shaw.
Hobbs and Shaw.
If you count the number of punches when they're fighting Idris Elba, you'll see that him and Statham throw identical numbered punches.
There's just so much egos bouncing around.
Grow up. If you think you're the modern Arnie and Stallone, then you need to get defeated once in a while because they took their licks.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. Talked about this earlier, but The Odyssey has more casting. And I said this when it was announced. I feel like every month it's going to be, and now this person's in it, and they might only be in it for 20 seconds, but they're in it. The latest is John Bernthal. So he's going to be joining Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Anne Hathaway, Zendaya, Robert Pattinson, Lupita Nyong'o, and Charlize Theron. And the latest rumour is that Tom Holland was going to be the lead, which doesn't surprise me.
I actually find that quite odd unless they're going with the idea of Telemachus being the lead or an equal lead to Odysseus, because Odysseus is supposed to be 40 to 50 years old in the Odyssey.
Well, that would make him Matt Damon, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so that's what I assumed when they first announced the casting. Oh, Matt Damon is Odysseus and Tom Holland is his son Telemachus. That makes sense. And then I was like, okay, they're both white, so Anne Hathaway is going to be Penelope, and then Lupita Nyong'o might be Athena or Calypso or something like that. But yeah, now I'm just kind of like, what are y'all doing? I guess we'll see. John Bernthal's an actor I enjoy whenever he's in stuff, so I'm curious to see what he'll play.
I talk about this often, but I'm usually pretty underwhelmed by Christopher Nolan movies. I think they're good, and I think they're usually technically amazing, but I tend to find them feeling very emotionally empty. I don't usually connect.
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
So this looks amazing, and it's technically doing everything brilliantly, but I don't care. I just have no emotional connection.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I say I'm cautiously excited, because for me, Christopher Nolan wouldn't be the director that I would want to direct an Odyssey movie. I don't even think the Odyssey should be a movie. I think it should be a show, but that's just me.
It's probably going to be 5 hours long, so it might as well be a show.
Or they'll do a trilogy or something. But finally, they have someone who's olive-skinned in a movie set in ancient Greece. We did it, y'all. We finally have one in the cast.
Surrounded by white people, but, progress.
A couple of black people. I did say on Twitter, from these castings of The Odyssey and Gladiator 2, you'd think there are no Mediterranean actors in the whole world. I think Bernthal has Jewish ancestry. I'm not sure of his ethnicity, but yeah, he's a good actor. I could see him playing, because I usually see him in roles where he's quite aggressive, like in The Bear and The Walking Dead and stuff, and Punisher, so I'm wondering if maybe he's playing the main suitor who's very aggressive towards Telemachus. I'm struggling to remember his name, even though I just finished the book. Or maybe a god like Poseidon or something who's antagonistic to Odysseus. I don't know.
One thing I recently found out is that apparently Christopher Nolan was one of the names considered to direct Troy back in the day.
Oh, okay. That was a terrible movie.
Yeah, it's not very good, but if he directed that, now he's effectively making the sequel, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe get Brad Pitt in there.
It should be a show that runs for seasons and seasons, and you start with Paris and Helen, and then you have Iphigenia, and then you have the actual war, and then you have the Odyssey and Agamemnon and all that. Just be like an 8-year-long endeavour with a massive budget. Why aren't you doing it?
Because Rings of Power has ran for 2 seasons and people are already sick of it, so that's why.
But the idea would be that it would be actually good.
Nah, that's not part of the deal. We'll just make it. It doesn't have to be good. We'll spend $1 billion per season. That'll make it good, won't it? But yeah, I'll be interested to see how it ends up panning out. But I imagine I'll watch the film and I'll come out thinking the same thing I do about most Nolan films. I can understand why people might be drawn to this, but I felt a bit empty. I felt like that with Oppenheimer. I felt like that with Interstellar. Tenet, I still don't understand what the hell was going on. Dunkirk was fine, I guess. Again, I don't connect with this.
I also just feel like, as well as cold emotionally, a lot of his films feel quite cold visually, and that is, again, not what I imagine for the Odyssey. They're very steely. Do you know what I mean? It all feels very clinical.
Nolan films are clever films for people that don't watch clever films. People praised Batman Begins and then they would explain the themes to you as if they'd understood them, but the film tells you what its theme is. So, okay, you've picked up on the fact that someone said that. Bruce Wayne needs to become a symbol in order to fight crime. Yeah, the film tells you that, but you could work that out if it didn't tell you that quite easily.
I really don't like those Nolan Batman movies. Not any of them.
I really like Batman Begins. Dark Knight, I go back and forth on. Dark Knight Rises, I just don't like. But I think Batman Begins is very good. The dialogue is very sterile, though. If you watch it now, it'll be... A lot of people are just explaining their motivations to each other.
It's the first instance of them explaining what they're doing so that you can be on your phone while you watch the movie.
It's interesting that he's chosen this project instead of Helicops, as the rumour was at one point. Going to be a future sci-fi movie where police fly around in little helicopters or are helicopters or something. I don't know where that rumour came from, but I'd kind of rather see it than this. Maybe that makes me uncultured. but I like my schlock.
I want an Odyssey movie, I just don't know if I want a Christopher Nolan Odyssey movie. That's where I'm at. I will watch it.
Maybe I want an Odyssey movie where they fly around in little helicopters. They could do that.
You can do a modern retelling of the Odyssey. There's loads of plays that do that. It'd be fine. I'd do it.
All the Shakespeare stage shows or films where they ride around on motorbikes and stuff like that, it's not a new thing.
Yeah, I've seen a production of Iphigenia where they're all wearing modern military fatigues and stuff like that. People do it all the time. I would be fine with that as long as it was good.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, our next item here is Tandy Newton, who starred in HBO's acclaimed Westworld, and Silo actor Steve Zahn have been cast in Anaconda, which is the remake of Anaconda. And that's about it.
Okay. I didn't even know this existed. I haven't seen the original, nor did I know there was a remake. That's my take.
Oh, the original's pretty schlocky. Paul Rudd and Jack Black are also in it, and it's going to be a comedy, this one.
Oh, okay.
It's described as an action comedy. The original film had Jennifer Lopez, Owen Wilson, Ice Cube and John Voight, and it followed a National Geographic film crew hunting for the world's largest and deadliest snake, only to find the tables turned. And I feel like you get what's coming to you if you're looking for the world's largest and deadliest snake, don't you?
Yeah.
This feels like something that you shouldn't do.
Yeah. I simply wouldn't be in the deep, dark cave that everyone got trapped in and died, you see, because I would never go in a cave.
Pretty much. It's directed by Tom Gormican, who directed The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, the Nicolas Cage movie where Nicolas Cage played himself, or a version of himself. So some good talent here, and it sounds like it won't be just a flat, straight remake. It seems like it's going to be a spin on the concept. So I'm more up for that than if it was just, we're doing Anaconda, but again, people go to jungle and get eaten by giant snake.
Again.
Jack Black should recognise this because it's effectively King Kong, isn't it?
Yeah. And he was also in Jumanji. Jack Black yearns for the jungle.
I do not like the Jumanji movies, the modern ones.
I quite enjoyed them, but I also watched them when I was recovering from a surgery, so that may have coloured my experience. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
And of course he'll be in Minecraft. That'll be a thing that he's doing.
Yeah, it sure will be a movie.
I will say the second trailer looked a lot better than the first trailer. As someone that's never played Minecraft as well.
Yeah, I've not played Minecraft. I don't really have any interest in Minecraft movie. I only watched the first trailer and I will admit it looked pretty cringe.
I waste enough time. I don't really need to be getting sucked into Minecraft.
Yeah.
My time doesn't need that. That's what stopped me from playing Animal Crossing, because I was thinking, if I don't stop, this game will have to become my life, because that's what it demands of you. And I don't want that. I don't want that for my video games. I want to play it for 10 to 15 hours and then put it away until years later when I decide to replay it. That's how I want to engage with a video game, except from the odd RPG where I'm happy to sink 60 hours into it or whatever.
I love me a good crunchy, long RPG. But also I love me a short 4-hour indie game that makes you cry and then it's done.
Yes, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was an exception for me. I played that to completion, but I won't do that with every game. I don't want to do that with every game. I would feel exhausted. All right, Robert Eggers is doing a couple of interesting things. After the success of Nosferatu, now he's going to make a werewolf film, and it's just going to be called Werewolf. And it's going to come out Christmas 2026, so just under 2 years from now.
That's pretty soon.
Yeah, shouldn't take too long to make, I suppose. He's probably been working on it for a while. He's going to work his way through all the Universal monsters.
Oh, is he actually doing the Dark Universe, cinematic universe thing?
By stealth, yeah. There's another Mummy movie in the works, but not from him, so it could happen.
Oh, really? I haven't seen Nosferatu yet, and I might be going to see it tomorrow, so no spoilies, please.
I found it to be a bit of a slog. I wasn't a fan of it.
Oh, no, okay. People seem to really love it.
Oh yeah, people love it. I'm just not one of them.
Sure, fair enough.
It looks amazing, but also I found it to be a slog. The cinematography is incredible. You'll look at shots and be like, wow, this is a really good looking film that I'm really bored by.
Is this a Christopher Nolan movie?
I haven't seen that many Robert Eggers movies before that, actually. I did watch The Witch, or The Vivitch as people call it, and I thought that was fine.
I'm wondering if I've seen any, because I was kind of like, oh, people are now talking about this guy a lot.
I didn't see The Northman.
Oh, is that him? Oh, The Lighthouse. Yeah, it's one of those ones where I always look at them and go like, oh, that looks kind of interesting, and then never see it.
He's doing a werewolf movie, so that's good for people that like Robert Eggers, I suppose.
And werewolves.
We seem to be overloaded by werewolves at the moment, because there was just The Wolfman that was out, which I haven't seen, and there was a film called Werewolves, I think, recently, which was set in a post-apocalypse or something. There seems to be a lot of them at the moment. We're out of the vampire fad and we're into the werewolf fad now.
We're into the werewolf fad, yeah.
We're back here again.
It's a never-ending cycle.
Where will we be next? I don't know. What other ones is there you can do? I'm sure we're overdue for another Underworld movie where you have vampires and werewolves.
Ooh.
There's a few of those. I'm not exactly sure how many Underworld movies there are, but I do enjoy them.
I don't think I've seen any.
They're pretty schlocky.
But I enjoy What We Do in the Shadows, which has both vampires and werewolves.
Yes, I haven't watched past season 1 of the show, actually. I've got a lot of that to catch up on. But I'm always a fan of Matt Berry, so it's just one day I'll get to it. Next thing, Robert Eggers is also going to be doing a sequel to Labyrinth. He's closed the deal to write and direct a sequel to that, which is insane. This seems top of the list or near the top of the list of stuff we just do not need.
Yeah, I was honestly being like, did we need a sequel to Labyrinth? It just seems like more farming for known IPs that we can turn into slot farms. I hope not.
It's odd that Robert Eggers would do that, though, because it seems like he's had a good run of just getting to do whatever he wants.
Yeah. It could be that he has a genuinely interesting idea for it, or it could be that this is him being like, this is my money-making thing, and then I get to do my weird shit as much as I want.
Or if you want to make your werewolf movie, you have to make our Labyrinth movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not in his head.
If you want to hear us on this podcast talk about Labyrinth, our superfan and donor Violet paid for us to talk about Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal last year. She chose the contributors and we put together an episode where we talked about those two movies. So it's interesting that this would come out now, just after we've done that. I wonder if Hollywood are listening to us and being like, right, do this now. That's an idea.
Yeah, they know. They're spying on you through all those Wi-Fi connections you sign up to.
Yeah, I will be cancelling all retrospective discussions after this because I don't want them making another one ever again. Are you a fan of Labyrinth? Was it a childhood favourite for you or anything?
It's one of those films where I'm like, I know I watched it when I was a kid and I really enjoyed it, but it was so long ago and I haven't watched it since that I don't remember it very well. But I know that I have seen it. So yeah, it sits in a weird place for me because people talk about it all the time and I'm like, I should really rewatch that so I actually remember it.
Before having to discuss it for the podcast, I'd seen it once and it was when I was like 19 at uni with drinks involved, so it just didn't stick with me as such.
And that's how I watched Dark Crystal.
And I had to rewatch it for the podcast, and then Dark Crystal, that was a first time watch for me because I'd never seen it. But I think I'm just too young for that to be my childhood. So I came a generation after I would have been watching those things. So I didn't watch them. So I was coming at it from the newbie perspective. So in that regard, I don't have a connection to it, so therefore I don't feel the need to watch a sequel. What they're going to do, bring Jennifer Connelly back as an adult and be like, yeah, I'm an adult now, this Labyrinth nonsense doesn't work on me anymore. And David Bowie's dead, so what do you do there?
Yeah, please don't do a weird AI CGI David Bowie, that'll feel so disgusting.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work. And does the Jim Henson Company still do puppet stuff outside of the Muppets whenever they do something with that? Don't know.
I think they do. I think they have to do other things. From what little I know of that world, a lot of puppet and stop motion companies do a lot of commercials these days.
Okay.
Because they're faster to turn around, obviously, if you're working in stop motion and stuff. With Jim Henson style puppets, though, I'm not entirely sure.
Every few years they revive the Muppets in some way, don't they? So that'll get them involved.
Yeah. I'm sure that keeps them busy.
So they're probably quietly making another Muppets thing that they haven't announced yet. That'd be my guess.
Yeah.
But unnecessary sequel to a film that was fine as one thing. We don't need any more.
Yeah.
All right, our last thing. During the CES 2025 keynote, PlayStation Productions head Assad Quiselbash and Screen Gems president Ashley Brooks explained how Sony plans to expand its IP after adaptations of The Last of Us, Gran Turismo, Twisted Metal and Uncharted. I never even saw Twisted Metal.
They named so many of the bad ones. Why not name Fallout?
I don't think that's a PlayStation thing, is it?
Oh, that's true. Sorry, I was saying they made so many bad video game adaptations. I think The Last of Us is maybe the only good one there.
Yeah, these are specifically PlayStation ones.
But they're specifically PlayStation, you're correct. Sorry, I retract my statement. I got too hasty.
I thought Gran Turismo was okay as a racing movie.
I didn't see it. I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, that exists. Sure looks like a movie.
It's based on a true story of some kid that was really good at Gran Turismo and became a racing driver. That's a real thing that happened.
Oh, okay. That's actually a bit more of an interesting take than I would assume you could do on a Gran Turismo movie. Because I was literally like, is there a story in Gran Turismo?
Not really. In the games, you're just a racing driver.
You just drive cars.
Yeah, you just buy a car and then you buy more cars and you work your way through all the races that you can do. So they just went with a biopic, effectively, of a person and they called it Gran Turismo because that's where he got his start.
Okay.
It's pretty good. I enjoyed it for what it was. Twisted Metal I didn't even see, but Anthony Mackie was in that one, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And Uncharted is really bad. Epically bad.
Yeah.
Talking about Tom Holland. Him as Nathan Drake, that's spectacularly bad casting.
Yeah. Again, I'm like, stop casting Tom Holland as guys who should be 35 plus.
There's an early scene in the film where he's working in a bar and I'm just thinking, you're not old enough to be in here. I know he's almost 30.
It's quite sad because he is in his 20s, but he just has such a baby face that he can't pull it off.
He's late 20s. There's the thing about the MCUs that you have Tom Holland, Florence Pugh, and Haley Steinfeld. They're all about the same age, but they're playing vastly different age ranges.
Yeah.
So if Hawkeye 2.0 and Spider-Man ever met, she would be the older one, even though they're the same age.
Yeah.
That's quite funny. Anyway, they announced that Sony Pictures is working on a film adaptation of Helldivers 2, which I haven't played, but that's one of those arena-based survival, kill everybody type games, isn't it?
Yeah, I haven't played it. I've got a friend who was really into it. From what I understand, the game is really good, but story-wise, it's just very similar to Starship Troopers, so it might just kind of be Starship Troopers again.
It's Fortnite-esque, isn't it? It's in that mold.
Yeah.
Which is why I haven't played it, because I don't like those sorts of games.
Yeah, I'm not super into that kind of games, but people really enjoy it. I don't want to play games with other people. I want to play games by myself, so when I suck at them, no one knows.
The brief period where I tried to play Call of Duty online, it was just me getting killed until the match was over. That's all that ever happened.
Yeah, and then called a twat by a 12-year-old.
Well, I didn't have the microphone, so I never heard that. But I would spawn, I would run around for a few seconds, then I'd be killed. And then I'd spawn again, and the same would happen. It would just keep happening until the match ended, so I never played them again. I'm not that good at video games. I just enjoy them sometimes. And the other one is they're in the early stages of developing a Horizon Zero Dawn movie.
Horizon Zero Dawn.
After an attempt at turning it into a Netflix series fell apart. Like the game, it will tell the main character Aloy's origin story in a fallen futuristic world, but that is all of the information we have about them for now. You have opinions about a Horizon movie.
Oh, I have so many opinions. I love Horizon Zero Dawn. It is one of my favourite video games of all time. Sequel was kind of disappointing for me. I have cosplayed Aloy, so I just want to emphasise, I love Horizon Zero Dawn. I really don't want a Horizon Zero Dawn movie. A TV series I could slightly see more, but like especially if it's adapting the story of the game, I kind of feel like inherently it's going to get up. And one of the reasons for that is I think they already are towing a line with the influences from indigenous cultures in terms of costume and the different tribes and stuff. And I think in live action, it's going to come across really not good. To have a white ginger girl dressed up in Native American suedes and fringe and stuff.
Well, they don't have to cast her white. They can...
They probably will. Aloy is white and ginger in the games, and they probably will cast someone who...
Look at the Last of Us casting sensibility, for example.
Yeah, and I would be totally chill with that. In fact, I think it might help some of those aspects, maybe. If they did cast, for example, an Indigenous American actress, I don't think they will. I think they'll go for someone who looks like Aloy from the games.
My guess would be the villain from Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
I can't remember her name, but she's white and ginger, and she was in Solo as well.
Oh, she's mixed race. Yeah, she's pretty light-skinned, but yeah, she's mixed race.
But she was ginger, crucially. I think that's the thing that stood out.
Yeah, crucially, she's ginger.
I think that's what stood out. When I heard that they were making this movie, she was the first actress that sprung into my mind. But
Oh, okay.
I can't remember her name.
Cool.
But yeah, her.
I've seen her in some other stuff. She's a good actor. Often in things that I think are not super great, but she's pretty good in them. So I would like to see her in something good.
Which may not be this.
Which may not be that. I hope it's good. I'm not super certain that it will be. I also just think the story that is told in that first game, it's a long game, and it's a brilliant story that is told in a long game, and I don't know if condensing it down into a movie and stripping away the gameplay elements is going to make it come across in the same way. I would like that story to be told to a wider audience because I think it's especially pertinent right now. It's literally a story about how an idiot tech billionaire destroyed the world by being selfish and arrogant, and that is a really important story. So I'm really torn about this. I think that story is beautiful. I would love it to be available to a wider audience. I think that some of the cultural aspects of the game are going to come across really poorly in live action, and I worry about that story being cut down and condensed into a film as opposed to a show. And also just a lot of the visual aspects of the machines and the costuming. God, I would love to work on the costumes for it. When it was announced as a TV show, I did kind of think, oh, those CGI robots are going to be real bad, aren't they? As a movie, it'll probably get a very good budget, I would hope. But if it's a poorly budgeted movie, because they're like, oh, it's a video game movie and we don't know if it's going to do super well, then it will just look bad. So yeah, I have all these really mixed feelings about it as a fan of Horizon Zero Dawn.
Or they'll throw all the money at it and just crunch the animators to the point where it looks bad anyway, like they always do with everything else.
Yeah, there's also that option. And there would be quite a few options for like really interesting practical effects, but I do think a lot of the machines would have to be really good VFX for it to carry through.
I started the first game and I actually found it a little bit too difficult. I got to a point where I just kept dying and then I was like, I've had enough. So I never went back to it. Maybe I was just playing it wrong, but I feel like there's a very steep learning curve to it. And it might be like other RPGs. I don't know, I've not played it beyond that, but it might be like other RPGs where you reach a point where it stops being difficult and becomes too easy. You get that with some games where suddenly you have all the gear and you're just invincible.
Yeah, I don't think Horizon is a game like that. Like, there are certain machines that by the end of the game you can just one-shot. You can one-shot a watcher, but only if you can get a headshot by the end of the game. So there's still an amount of challenge, but the game is still presenting you with new challenges, and just having the best bow doesn't mean you can just take down the strongest machine really easily. You still have to strategize, which is something I actually really appreciate about it. Like I said, I love that game. I'm a little bit worried.
I'll maybe go back to it one of these days, but for some reason I just never hit that sweet spot where I felt like I was progressing at a reasonable rate. Maybe I was just really bad at it. Maybe I was playing it wrong. I don't know.
Maybe.
But I was interested in it. I found the story quite engaging up to the point I was at, and I liked the characters and stuff like that. So maybe I'll just watch a Let's Play to get it.
The first Horizon game, I have big criticisms of the second one, but the first Horizon game, genuinely one of my favourite video game narratives ever. I hope they do it justice. I hope they do some things to mitigate some of the potential issues with Indigenous representation. Fingers crossed. We'll see. They didn't follow through with the TV show. I think that it will be so expensive to make. I do wonder if it will fall through again. They are big, well-known games, but there's only 2 games, 3 if you count the VR, 4 if you count the Lego game. So the main series only has 2 games.
The DLC's kind of another mini one as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess. But my point is it's not a big, long-running franchise like Fallout is, and it didn't quite hit the mainstream in the way that some other games have. But yeah, I wonder if they might think, oh, is there actually enough of an audience for the amount of money we're going to have to spend on this to make it appealing? I'm very curious about a number of things related to this movie.
Well, it's like you say, it's too sprawling to do in a couple hours, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess if you really condensed it down. Again, it's that thing of when you adapt video games, I think you have to do something to help with the fact that you're taking away the gameplay, which is a method of storytelling as well as things like cutscenes and dialogue. So in Fallout, they did that by having the 3 protagonists who all represent a different style of play. In Horizon, maybe they would find a way to do it, but I think that the machine hunting and figuring out the best parts to hit on a machine and conserving your resources and stuff, that tells you something about that world, which I guess you could depict easily through action scenes and stuff.
Yeah, it's like with The Last of Us, you don't need them cowering from infected in every episode. In a game, that's fine because you're involved in surviving that, but in a TV show, it'd be, oh god, they're huddled in a dark area and there's clickers everywhere. Okay, we saw that last week, fine. And it's things like you don't have them wandering around the university for hours. As a gamer, that's fun because you're exploring an area, but in a TV show, it's just slowing down the narrative, isn't it?
Yeah, but then The Last of Us has, I think, a very easy narrative to adapt into a TV show or a movie and have it feel right. I think Fallout is the more challenging one. That's why I'm actually more impressed by Fallout as an adaptation, because I think it's the more challenging game to adapt into a non-interactive media format. And Horizon, I think, is challenging in a similar way to Fallout. Not exactly the same because it doesn't have the build your own character aspect to it, but it is an open world game with a lot of things to explore and quite a long narrative to it. So I think in that respect, it is more challenging to adapt than something like The Last of Us, which is also trying to be very cinematic.
Yeah, based on my limited experience of Horizon, I already feel like you're fighting uphill trying to make this into a movie because you just don't have that level of time.
Yeah.
People seem to forget that video game stories, even the short games, even Uncharted, you're still experiencing that over like 12 hours, as limited as the narrative is. And you could condense it into 2 hours because it's just people go to places and try and find artifacts, get into fights along the way, all that stuff. It's just an Indiana Jones movie turned into a game, more or less. So it's easy enough to condense that. Same with Tomb Raider, similar idea. But there's other ones where these stories are designed to be told over a longer period of time. The Last of Us being a TV show made sense because you could get the main points done in 8 hours quite easily, or 9 hours, however long it was.
And I guess the intention could be for it to be a trilogy or something.
Yeah, but I feel like it's too big a risk. We'll pay for one film.
Yeah, and then what do you do with the sequel?
Yeah.
I also think it's utterly tragic that the actor who played Silence is... I mean, it's tragic that he's dead in general. Rest in peace, he was such a good actor. But they could have literally just cast him as Silence in the movie, and it would have been perfect. He could have just played his character, and he was so good. What are they going to do with him in the third game?
I guess the main question is, are they going to get Pedro Pascal in this one? Because he's in everything.
They'll shoehorn him into everything. He could play Rust, I guess. Then he has to die relatively early. Actually, you know what? He could play the Sun King. That would actually be a role he'd be very good for. And he kind of looks like him.
See, I don't know who that is.
Play Horizon. So we can talk about it.
I might just watch a Let's Play so I can experience the story without having to worry about actually playing it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Without having to worry about reaching a point and just getting killed a lot and then not being able to get past it.
It does have easy modes and stuff.
Yeah, I don't like playing on easy mode. It feels like giving up.
Does it feel like a concession? Yeah.
It is less giving up than actually just giving up. But I just don't go through things on easy mode. Normal or better is my vibe. I managed The Last of Us on Grounded, so I can get to the point where I'm skilled enough to do certain things. Although for the Grounded playthrough, I was watching a tutorial that a speedrunner did for tips on just how to get through areas and stuff. Yeah, Horizon, weird one.
It is a weird one.
I do also think it's weird that they made a Lego game out of it.
Yeah, I haven't played it yet. I'm salty that they put a particular character on the cover who they killed off in the sequel, and I'm really angry about the way he was killed off because I think it was really stupid and very bad storytelling. So I'm a bit like, why are you using him on your marketing? Leave him alone. Let him rest in peace.
Is the Lego game just a Lego adaptation of the first game? Is that all it is?
I have no idea. I have no idea what it is.
It's a weird choice. But I suppose if you want to open it up to more people, then have a kid-friendly video game that can be played, I suppose.
Yeah, even though it's really not kids-friendly. Not in, oh, it's so gory way. It's quite a challenging game with a story about themes that kids might not latch onto and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, it may not happen. Like you say, there's a good chance it'll just fall through. It's just they made plans to do it. But PlayStation Studios now exists, so they're going to try and pitch a bunch of...
Yeah, and they'll have to make another good thing eventually.
That's the problem with this console generation, is there's no games. None of the system sellers that you would expect.
Right, yeah.
You know, I've had the PS5 since launch. I liked Spider-Man 2, that was good, and other stuff, but nothing really...
When things are console exclusive now, it feels weird. This is maybe a bad example because the first Hellblade game wasn't an exclusive to any particular console, and then the sequel is an Xbox exclusive, and I don't have an Xbox, so I was like, okay, so I won't play the sequel then. That just feels weird.
But they're also not exclusive anymore because Spider-Man 2 and the first one and the Last of Us games all came to PC.
Yes, and Horizon did as well eventually.
So it's almost like if you want to play everything, you just invest in a decent PC and then you'll get it eventually. But you'd probably wait a while, and I don't know if buying a PS5 is cheaper than getting the equivalent gaming rig.
If you can find one.
Well, they're easy to find now. You can buy a Pro, because that's pointless, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not getting one of those.
I seem to always get games consoles in the weirdest ways. I bought my PS5 from my cousin's friend. I get my games consoles at cash converters and through friends and stuff like that.
I mean, that's fine. See, I was dumb and bought a PS5 at launch, and then there was nothing to play on it for ages. There still isn't, really. There still isn't anything on it this is worth having the console just for this. And we're, 5 years in?
I hear Deathloop is very good. I've got it, but I haven't played it yet.
I don't think I'd be into that. I genuinely don't think there's really any game that is... You need to buy this console to play this.
Yeah, there are console-exclusive games. They don't seem to have been massive hits. I enjoyed Forspoken. I think it got way more flack than it deserved for very bigoted reasons. I liked it.
I have that, but I've not played it. I got it for £10, so if I get £10 worth of fun out of it whenever I decide to play it, then that'll be fine.
Yeah. I think it takes a while to open up, and then once it opens up, it's such a fun game, and one of my favourite systems of traversal through gameplay that I've experienced in a game, and I think it's such a shame that it just got tarred with this brush from some actually not that dissimilar in quality dialogue from other video games in one trailer.
I was going to play it after I finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but then I was a bit burned out on RPGs at that point.
Big games.
I need a palate cleanser of, if I'm going to play something, I need it to last me 8 hours and not require me to really think about it too much. So I just haven't got to it yet, but I will one of these days.
I was about to suggest you play Oxenfree again, but if you don't want to think about it too much, maybe that's not the right choice. It's a really good game.
I am trying to play Final Fantasy 16 at the moment because I bought it for £20 on Amazon.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm not finding it super engaging at this point. I'm about 12 hours in or something.
I was a Final Fantasy super fan when I was a kid, and I don't play them anymore because they don't appeal to me anymore. Which I think is quite sad.
I stopped playing them basically after 10. I did get 12, but I didn't get into it. And then I got Final Fantasy VII Remake / Rebirth because I love Final Fantasy VII. So I got that, and then I love those games. And then decided to give 16 a go because I saw it cheap. And it's the kind of game that I feel like worries, well, I will cramp its style if it lets me play it.
Yeah.
Because it keeps taking control off me to do cutscenes. And there's too many quick time events and stuff. So I'm just like, just let me fight this battle. I just want to fight this thing. So stop it. God of War, the second one, was a bit like that as well. There'll be a God of War series or film at some point as well, I imagine.
Probably, yeah, that'll be the next one, I think. And that'll also be really expensive to produce and could look really bad if they don't put the effort in.
And they won't be able to copy the single camera trick that the two games have. You know, everything's in a single take, effectively. They won't be able to do that. So it'll just be kind of visually bland, I suppose. Unless they get Robert Eggers to make it.
And I guess you could do a Birdman. Has anyone ever done a video game adaptation that's done in a single take, quote unquote? That could be quite interesting.
Well, no. I mean, there aren't that many video game adaptations still to this day. There's a load of them that Uwe Boll used to make back in the day, but they're all terrible. Blood Rain and Alone in the Dark and all that.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of video game adaptations, and they do have a reputation for being bad.
They do. I feel like now we're starting to sort of shirk that.
But anyway, that was our last news item, so that's us done. That was our chat about January 2025's news, trailers, other bits and pieces. Issa, thanks for stepping in for this video game tinged conversation as it ended up being.
Yeah, you know me. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Absolutely. Anytime. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Many of those platforms also have rating and review systems built in that you can rate and review the podcast. So, Issa, how many stars should the guys give us when they go into these things and go to rate us?
11 million.
I mean, if you can, there will be some third-party platform that has that kind of nonsense, maybe.
Yeah.
Also 5, just the maximum, but 5. And you can leave a comment as well. If you want to discuss anything we discussed here, or anything really, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, for now, Blue Sky, or you can just leave us a comment on newbeforeblog.co.uk. You can also join us on Discord, where we have an engaged community of currently a listener, so please help us be plural and join us there, where we can discuss all of this stuff in a safe and non-Elon Musk environment. For more of these news roundups, for interviews and deep dive analytical discussions about your favourite nerdy things, please join us on Kneel Before Pod.